bad.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo, also known as Ricky France, and a great episode for you today. Actually, a very great special episode for you today. Today we have the filmmaker who might have created one of the most important, suppressed, if not the most suppressed documentary of all time. Mikki Willis from the PLANdemic documentary is with us. If you guys watched PLANdemic when it went viral, he is the one interviewing Dr. Judy Mikovits, and we had an amazing 3-hour conversation. I am so grateful for him taking the time to chat with me for so long, but I'll keep this intro short and sweet because it is a long conversation. If you want to support my show, I do have a Patreon page. In the show description on our YouTube channel, you'll find links to our Patreon page, to my PayPal account if you want to tip the show. Also, I have a merchandise store if you want to support the show that way. So plenty of different ways to support the show. Let's attempt to do this value for value thing. If you get value out of this show, then support the show. It doesn't matter if it's just $1. Everything helps, and if everybody contributes a little bit, then hopefully my goal of doing this full time will be something that happens sooner rather than later. With that said, also support our guest's work. You can go to PLANdemicSeries.com. It's one of the few places it's still available. His documentary, he also lets you download it. So similar to my podcast, he's letting people post it and upload it and share it anywhere and everywhere just to get the information out there. On Ben Swan's website, ise.media, that also has the documentary. And if you go to my YouTube channel, RV Theory 6, or just search for Ripple Effect Podcast, in the show description, I always have links to our guests' sites and social media accounts, and also my Patreon page, all my social media accounts, my PayPal account, all that stuff. So it's a great way of connecting with us, or getting to the merch store, which is the Ripple Effect Podcast, merch.com. All those links are there. Hopefully, my YouTube channel still exists after having Mikki on the show. If not, please know that the rippleeffectpodcast.com takes you to my website where you can listen to all my shows. You have links to my social media accounts and all that stuff. So that's always going to exist, hopefully. So thanks for listening. Enjoy the conversation, and I will see you guys on the next one. Films and stuff, you know all about technical difficulties, and it's nothing like panicking when you're supposed to, like, everything's supposed to be working, and then you're trying to, like, figure out, like, which chord, something, you know, is causing this issue.
Yes, well, we figured it out, so I'm happy about that. How you doing, brother?
Good. Thanks for being with me. Man. I really appreciate it. I have a soft spot for people like yourselves. Like, you know, I've had Thomas Drake on and other whistleblowers on, and when you hear their stories and you hear, you know, people who are willing, because there's something, you know, it's a reflection of your character. You know, like I've heard on past interviews you talk about, you know, you had a lot of opportunities to try to make this whole project profitable, and you didn't. You wanted to kind of keep the focus on the project and the issues and getting out the information. And it's just, you know, I don't think people talk enough about that, you know, because one of the things you say in past interviews too is just how great the media is at character assassination. And you can't defend yourself, and you can't, you know, people will see a debunking video, and people will see, you know, a debunking article. They'll never read it, but just because it exists, you know, or if they do read it, they don't research if the stuff's even correct. But just because it exists, people will it plants a seed of doubt, you know, and it's like, well, maybe it is BS, maybe it is that, or maybe, you know, and so first I just, you know, I guess we might as well start from the beginning. what's a little bit of your background, and how did you get, for people who are listening who might not be familiar with your background and some of your past life experiences and journeys, how did you get to now? And I always think, like, you understand now by retracing your steps and learning the history. So let's start with some of your history.
It's a long story. One that I actually just told on stage 2 days ago in Georgia. It was the first time to tell the full story. G. Edward Griffin invited me to come speak at his Red Pill event, and he wanted me to tell the whole story. And
at Jekyll Island, right?
Yeah, at Jekyll Island. It was amazing. It was a really, really extraordinary event. So if I could encapsulate that by, hold on one sec. Hold on.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm doing an interview, baby. Sorry about that. Had forgot to let my wife know that I was starting the interview.
Yeah, well,
she's in there listening to her own podcast and they're reacting out loud like she does. Oh my God! Anyway, so okay, take two. In a nutshell, I've been working in and around Hollywood for over 30 years. And so I started in front of the camera and kind of fell out of love with that really rapidly. I was thrust into a few recurring roles, one on a soap opera and another TV show, and did some work and really found myself not liking that kind of attention. And just really quickly, which I'm so grateful for, becoming disillusioned by the whole fame game, and just feeling what a weird life it creates for you, because then you're suddenly surrounded by a bunch of yes people and people that like you because you're on a show or something like that, and you just start to feel to feel the lack of sincerity around, and then the industry is just so harsh, and it's just based upon competition, and you're competing against, all your friends are within your demographic, so you're competing against all your friends. So everyone, there's like this constant, you're happy your friend booked a job, but you wanted that job. So there's a bittersweet feeling. It just all felt so weird to me that I just couldn't do it. And so I ended up jumping behind the camera, and I should say, really first it was jumping into theater. And I built a theater in my early 20s, pretty much from the ground up, rented a building and then built a 99-seat theater. And I started teaching, and I really enjoyed teaching actors. And I had studied with one of the most famous acting teachers in the world, so I was kind of passing on his technology. And I fell in love with that, and that led me to directing for theater, and then and writing and directing one-act plays, and then that led to doing some stuff behind the camera. Actually, in the heyday of infomercials is when I cut my teeth, and that was actually very good, as cheesy as infomercials can be. But back then, they were actually spending real money on them and making them look like mini movies. I don't know if you remember that era, but they were pretty nice, and a lot of them were shot on film back then, and it was crazy, spending $500,000 on an infomercial. But I learned a lot, because there's so much focus put into communicating a message to sell a product, and so it really kind of forced me. It's been one of the secret sauces of our viral successes, because I'm always thinking about what demographic we're speaking into, what language to speak, realizing. From that experience, I realized as we were placing infomercials in different markets around the world that, the Midwest would accept this, but the East Coast wouldn't, and like really where the different pockets of language lived, and how to communicate to everyone without watering down a message so much that it lost its potency. And so I'm grateful for that experience. And then I went on to direct my first movie in the late 90s, and by the time it was done, it was 2001, and that took me to New York for a meeting on a distribution deal. And while I was there, the World Trade Center was attacked, and I did 3 days of search and rescue and body recovery, and it changed my life. And I suddenly found myself in a position of not wanting anything to do with Hollywood anymore. I kind of went through kind of a resistance phase where I just could see the machinery for what it was, and realized that that it's not why I got into the business, and that it was really soul crushing to so many people, which I think is why they have so much mental illness and drug addiction and everything else that comes from Hollywood that we see. There's a reason for it. It's not that a bunch of bad people get involved, it's that it creates bad people because of the system that it is. And so I saw that, and I felt that in my own being, and just wanted out. And that led me to creating the company that I have now called Elevate, which was just a commitment to, let's remember why we get into our art, why we do what we do, and let's also exercise the power of filmed media in a way that leaves the world in a better place than we found it. That's how it started.
I think that's something people are finding more and more of, is that the world of, or this idea, this dream of having the white picket fence and having that high paying career job and all that stuff, like we think we've been sold, like a book of lies, like that, hey, if you take this path, at the end of this road you'll find happiness. It's not because you'll have all these material things and you have all these ones and zeros in your bank account, and just worry about yourself and be cutthroat and work as much as you can and do all this stuff. And then you get there and you realize you're lonely. You realize that you haven't built relationships with your friends or family. Maybe you're doing a job that pays well but doesn't make you happy. And then sometimes it's too late, and then, like you said, and then you're self-medicating with drugs or alcohol or whatever it may be. And that's why you do see this. I mean, sometimes you hear these stories of like kids who like, oh, they came from a good family. I don't know what's wrong with them. I'm like, well, you mean good family because their parents have good paying jobs? It doesn't mean they're good parents. They might be really good at this job, this job that's making them money. But the most important job of being a parent, they suck at. Because they're working overtime. They're always at work.
Yeah.
So it's it is weird because we live in a world where we judge people so much based on like how much financial gain they have or material things they have, and it's like, oh, I want to be them, and they've done studies with like tribes, they find tribes in the Amazon where they have no signs of anxiety or depression or anything. And a lot of that comes from income inequality and just inequality in general. Like they find that in societies where the poorest and the richest, that space is less, that there's less of that envious nature and wanting, feeling like you're not enough or you're not good enough or whatever, because you don't have that person, who. So it's all really perspective. If we lived in Africa where water, clean water was a big deal, we look like kings and queens. So I think it definitely says something about you, about having that realization. It makes sense because obviously the risk you took and the path you end up taking in your life, making what I think is probably one of the most important documentaries ever in the history of documentaries.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, it's as you were speaking, I was remembering a lesson that I learned early on, and I'm grateful for this, and that is, our world is topsy-turvy, it's inverted, it's backwards, and if we can understand that, it really helps us navigate our momentum moving forward. And I'll tell you what I mean by this. So we're taught that we achieve everything from the outside in. So you mentioned this in the beginning of what you just said. It's like if I just work really hard and get all these things out there, the car and the house and the body and the whatever, then I'll have what I need in here. And it's backwards. It really is about being okay with this, who you are and what you were given, and actually being grateful for whatever it is you were giving. I think there's a real pitfall that we're constantly, we're wired to be attracted to, typically because of decades of advertising, convincing us that we need to look this way and feel this way and act this way to fit in and to be accepted. So we're constantly, trying to fill a void, an imaginary void. And if we could just kind of come to terms with, instead of comparing ourselves to like, that's the way I should look or be, or when I'm there that I'm successful. It's really the other way around. It's completely being grateful for what we have and exactly what we were giving, even if it's completely opposite of the person that we admire, like really expressing, again, gratitude for our individual, unique expression of what we are, and our voice, the way we look, all of that. And there's something really powerful in doing that, because then it's like it comes from the inside out. Like you feel good about you, then suddenly others feel good about you, and then you attract, the love and all of that. It's really an important lesson in life, and it is what, when I got that in my world, that is what kept me from being sucked into the machinery of Hollywood. I've had numerous opportunities. You mentioned here, I actually passed up a $17 to $20 million offer for PLANdemic. And it was quite easy, to be honest with you. And I'm glad I did, because it's now proven to be having been a really good move, because it would have messed things up for us. I can explain that later. But part of that good decision making, I think, comes with just being in a place of like, I have everything I need. I have everything I need. And so the rest is just, is this a great addition to my already awesome life? But when you're in this place of I need, and I'm incomplete, and I need to get this, and everything's an opportunity to take a next step towards that goal, of that exterior goal of fame and fortune or whatever, that's when we make a lot of bad decisions. And that's when, and I'm only spending the time talking about this because literally this is at the crux of what we're fighting. Everyone that we went up against in the PLANdemic series, I believe somewhere along the lines, through incremental steps, has made just one small bad step after the next that has led them into a place now that they are so used to, addicted to, stuck in, imprisoned in, whatever it might be, that they can't get out themselves. And I think that's where a lot of people end up later in life, in a place that they don't want to be. So it starts from the inside.
Yeah, it so does. I know you were not too long ago on a podcast with Pete Evans, who's been on my show a few times, the Australian chef, and he talks. I love that guy. He's just awesome. We had a great conversation, and he focused a lot. I know it sounds hippie, like the whole like spirituality thing, but you're right. I mean, so many of our issues are. I mean, one thing, and you touched on in your work, is just the power of the media and how they can convince you that, you need this, you need that. Like how many people, if technology never progressed again, we'd be okay. But yet the new thing comes out, right? And it's like, now I need that. This old thing sucks now all of a sudden. It's like, it's such an issue. And there's a great older documentary. I remember having somebody on from the film years ago called The Corporation. It was a Canadian documentary. You remember that, right? And it was all,
I produced a film with that filmmaker. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Awesome. Yeah. And it really broke down it let people understand the psychology, the science, all the manipulation that goes into commercials, music, the voice they use, everything is well thought out. So sometimes when somebody's addicted to their phone, or when somebody is buying something they don't need, in a way it's like, get a hold of yourself. But in another way, I almost feel bad for them, because it's almost an unfair battle. They're dealing with their everyday priorities, taking care of their kids, doing yard work, going to work, whatever, dealing with all those stresses. And then they have billions of dollars invested in this commercial, or this media empire that will sell you a story, and they're constantly tugging at you. And we've talked a lot on this show throughout the years about Edward Bernays, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and the power of propaganda, and how so much of it is subconscious. You don't even know that it's happening. And yeah. So to get into that, when did you start being skeptical about what was going on in regards to the lockdown?
Oh, in regards to the lockdown, right away, immediately.
Really?
Oh yeah. It was. I was already working on a project called The Narrative, and I was working with some top whistleblowers around the world. So there was already we were on red alert for a false flag, and anyone who knew the political game enough knew that something major was coming, a terrorist attack, or something major. And I'd put that out publicly. I told people, be on the lookout. There's going to be a mass shooting or some major event that's going to happen within the next 2 months. And so it's the moment that I heard that there was a disease, a new novel virus that was coming around right away. We want to take those things seriously. We don't want to assume right away that it's fake or anything like that, because we don't want to be stupid. But I was suspicious right away, and that's one of the reasons why I went to talk with Judy Mikovits, the virologist that was the feature of PLANdemic 1, because I wanted to find out from her what she thought was happening. And when she broke it down for me, I said, yeah, that's what I thought was going on. And I already had some history with Anthony Fauci, having lost a brother to AIDS, and remembering back then when that happened, that I was told that my brother didn't die of the disease, that he died of the medications that were then pushed by Anthony Fauci. And so I was already suspicious of him. And then Judy confirmed what I was thinking, and so I said, why don't you come to my studio? We'll do a little sit-down interview with you and I, and I'll pay for it, and we'll put it out there, because I think your story needs to be told, and I think it's a very important time that people understand that this man they're listening to has a very, very checkered past, and maybe up to the same shenanigans now that he was up to then, and so far that's proven to be accurate.
Yeah, I've said this on the show multiple times. I've done a lot of shows with people in the alternative medicine, functional medicine world, doctors, filmmakers, people, Brian Hooker, who is linked to the CDC whistleblower and vaccines.
Yeah.
I mean, the filmmakers who did, I think it was called The Big Secret, Dr. Brzezinski. I've been seeing this for so long. I've been telling people, I'm like, this censorship, like where it is the most obvious for years, it's been in alternative medicine, like big pharma. I remember telling, I'm like, when I was growing up, I remember when I got into alternative media and history and all this stuff and really started going down those rabbit holes, it was all about the military industrial complex, right? It was like, that's the biggest threat to humanity, because it's like, oh my God, look at the way they could sell people wars. Like, we are willingly going somewhere, dying for a cause that doesn't exist. And then after a while, I'm like, holy shit, like, forget the military industrial complex. Big pharma is who we should really be scared of. Their influence is crazy.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's the most toxic force on the planet right now, matched only by mainstream media. It's doing more harm than anything has ever done, and it's when you have the threat of a physical attack, it's a scary, dangerous thing to get into a physical altercation. But what's even more damaging is somebody who's manipulating or attacking psychologically, invisibly. And that's what Big Pharma has been doing for generations. And it's not until now that we're able to actually see the damage they've done and understand that, let's put this into perspective, really. Let's put this into perspective of what's been under attack. So two major things that both media and pharma have been focused on, and that is our immune system and our attention. And those are two of our most powerful, I call them the Holy Grail. I call our attention the Holy Grail. If you understand, the work of Joseph Campbell, that there was always some boon or some Holy Grail that the hero was seeking to protect somehow, the jewel of the Nile, and our attention is, we don't talk about it much. We don't even think about it much, but it's literally the rudder of our ship. It's the thing that guides our life. And when you hear things like, oh, you just want to capture someone's attention, take that seriously, because the capturing of your attention means I own you. And so if we can, as a product, as a brand, as Big Pharma, whatever it might be, if I can get into your mind and get your attention for a second, to capture it, and then convince it that it needs only what I have to survive or to be awesome, whatever it might be, then you're a lifelong customer for me. And if we can get, if I'm Big Pharma and I can get 7 billion people to be a lifelong customer, I'm set. And so that's the war on our attention. This is every billboard we see. That's why they just get more risque and more shocking, and every reality show goes, a little bit further, because once we get used to seeing something, it no longer captures our attention. We go, oh yeah, I've seen that billboard before. Even if I haven't seen that billboard, I've seen it before. So they go, okay, let's take it up a notch, and let's make the wording shocking. Let's make the imagery shocking. And how far do we go with this? because then what's the damage that's done, especially to our little ones, when the adults are playing this game of shock advertisement. What does that do to the psyches of our developing minds, our little ones that are just learning what the world is? And then we have the immune system issue. And so big pharma has been attacking both of those things, been trying to capture our attention by telling us, that we need their drugs, and it's severed our relationship and our umbilical cord to the planet, to nature, to the infinite divine design of nature. Like, this system itself is, I don't use the word divine lightly. I mean it like it's pristine, it's perfect. And we keep effing it up with the choices that we make. But we were designed to coexist with our planet, to evolve with our ever-changing, evolving planet. And it's I mean, just think about it. I mean, if you just marvel at what nature has provided, the fact that a walnut looks exactly like a brain with two hemispheres, and it's brain food. That there are certain foods, bell peppers and stuff, that look just like the heart, that are heart foods. I mean, the planet it grows from it the most colorful, beautiful, nutritious, healing medicine that we'll never be able to match it. But somehow we've been severed. I know exactly when it happened and who did it. But then we perpetuated it since the Rockefellers in the early 1900s, inverted the whole system such that, we now see ancient medicines, herbal medicines, everything that was grown from the intelligence of nature for us as alternative quackery. And we look towards this synthetic, petroleum-based fake medicine. And I don't mean to completely slam Western medicine, because there is, I think, many parts of it is miraculous, and we should be incredibly grateful for the innovation of Western medicine. But it's not meant to run our lives. It's not meant to be every time we feel a headache or feel sad, we pop a pill. That is destroying our immune systems. And if we have compromised immune systems, way beyond climate and all the stuff that they're out there marching saying is a threat, this is the threat. When we can no longer survive our environment, and we need synthetic remedies to be able to survive our increasingly toxic world, we're in trouble. And so that's what we have to get past, and get back to a place of trust for nature itself, and trust for ourselves, and trust for each other. It's a very critical part of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, like you said, for a long time, herbs, all types of teas, all these things were considered medicine, plant medicines, you know. And then, like you said, eventually the Rockefellers, the AMA, all the stuff, they end up changing what we considered medicine. Where now a doctor learns nothing about diet and nutrition. They know nothing about, your immune system. I mean, it's basically it's symptom management. I mean, it's Dr. Chris Kresher. He's a functional medicine doctor. He says modern medicine is like having a rock in your shoe, and instead of telling you to take off the shoe and get rid of the rock, they give you a painkiller. It's like that's what they would do. They don't get to the root cause of the issue. It's all symptom management, and so it's a huge issue. You know who Jim Abrams is, the filmmaker who did like Naked Gun and Airplane. Yeah. So are you familiar with his son's story, Charlie? So I'm a big fan of eating organic and healthy and whatnot. I've been in the ketogenic diet for a long time. I've been doing it for quite a long time, and I had him on because he has a link to it. His son had these really violent seizures when he was born, and he had access to this is at the height of his career. He has access to all the best doctors, hospitals, all the stuff. He had friends who were getting him to cut in line on hospitals to see doctors because they gave money to those hospitals or whatnot. Everybody, the only remedy they had was chemical based. It was some type of medication. He was on all these medications. His son ended up having a surgery that wasn't necessary, and And then one day he runs into a book about how the ketogenic diet can cure these seizures. They've had some luck at Johns Hopkins. And so he ends up talking to his doctor about it. His doctor says, "Oh, it sounds too hard. I don't think it'll work." And then he's like, "Sounds too hard. Try living with seeing your son have violent seizures. Sometimes 100 of them a day. Like that's hard. So he ends up doing it. I'm trying to make this story fast, so that's why I'm short. That's why I'm talking so fast. But people have heard me say it before, but it's important and it's relevant to your story, and I'll tell you why. So he ends up eventually doing it, curing his son in 24 hours of all his violent seizures, ends up creating a foundation called the Charlie Foundation. And to simplify, what was going on was his brain couldn't use glucose as an energy source. So if you pop your body and get ketosis and you're burning fat as an energy source, because your body can burn both. It's a hybrid car. It can use glucose or ketones and burn fat for energy. Then it bypasses this issue of not being able to use glucose as an energy source. Well, he ends up, starting this foundation called the Charlie Foundation, promoting all the benefits of dietary therapies and whatnot. Also, this guy, Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who's been on my show, who wrote Cancer as a Metabolic Disease, I think is the title of the book. And he has a bunch of peer-reviewed studies about how you can use basically the ketogenic diet to fight and sometimes prevent cancer, because we know glucose is an energy source of cancer. So it only makes sense if you starve it of that energy source, it will have some positive effects. Of course, this guy has tons of peer-reviewed studies. Nobody's interested in it because there's no pill to sell. But my point is, and the reason why this is relevant to your story is because this guy had all the best doctors, and none of them even mentioned the ketogenic diet as being a possible thing to entertain, right? And now as you know, people during this whole lockdown thing was like, this doctor is right. This doctor, only listen to this doctor. This guy who studies medicine and has a PhD and also should be a credible person. You're telling me that his opinion is completely off. But yet, in all other aspects of life, if I have a knee injury or whatever, it's quite acceptable to have multiple doctors with multiple opinions on what could be wrong with me. But yet, during this lockdown, we decided that these doctors that we see on TV, their opinion is truth with a capital T, and everything else is pseudoscience. And that was a huge issue, because you were talking to credible people with resumes, and just because they're going against the grain, all of a sudden it was pseudoscience.
Well, it's amazing to me that that the public still falls for this. I think by this point, that the public would be smart enough to know that any time that the medical industry or the mainstream media says something's been debunked, it means the opposite. They don't, any doctor that's been terribly debunked, there's probably something there that we should listen to. And it's blown my mind to see during this process with PLANdemic, to see doctors who are beloved and deeply respected, and the moment that they step out to say, all right, I've seen enough now, and even if it's very mild, even if they just say, the ventilators are definitely the wrong choice. The moment that they challenge anything, they're villainized, and in the whole world, he's been debunked. Oh, he's a charlatan, whatever. Just like that, somebody who has a 40, 50-year career of doing good work overnight is suddenly cast out of society. And it's amazing that people don't see this for what it is. This is all we've never experienced anything to this degree before, because we have never experienced this kind of political climate. This is politics. This is really not medicine. These are dirty people within medicine taking the bait and the bribes from politics. And if we could just stay focused on what this is really about. I mean, this is crystal clear that this is about Donald Trump. That's what this thing is about. This wouldn't be happening right now if we just had a normal election year with two competing opposing sides. But an outsider got into the game, and doesn't matter to me if your listeners love or hate him. We have to at least. That's the problem in itself, right? So people who hate him, they don't want to hear anything outside of what the mainstream media has said, that this is all his fault and all that, because this is what it's set up to be. This was set up to crash the economy and to blame Trump. That's what it is. You can still hold your hatred and your blame and your disdain or whatever you want to do. If that's anyone who's listening to this has that, you still hold that. But it's dangerous to not look at the reality of this situation for what it is, because it will invite it to happen again. And we can't take much of this in this country until we become, completely destroyed. And so we need to look at it for what it is. This is an outsider got into the political game that wasn't supposed to get in there. And a lot of the game is being revealed for what it is, things that have been kept secret from you and I forever. There's been a lot of smart people who caught onto it long before I did. And Donald Trump is a bull in the china shop. And they are, intentionally creating this situation. It's clear to me now, this is not just my opinion. This is, I just got back from an event, as we mentioned at the beginning of this call, with, another 50 very incredible speakers. And they all say the same thing. They know what's going on. They know what it's about. They know this is to intentionally crash the economy, which is why no matter what the CDC comes out and says, despite the fact that whatever it was 3 days ago, one of the heads of the WHO came out and said that we shouldn't have locked down and we shouldn't be locked down now, that it's detrimental to the economy and there was never a good enough reason for it. These are all the agencies that everyone said, listen to them. The CDC keeps releasing new numbers saying this is actually less deadly than the seasonal flu, and and no one adjusts around it. We get people like Gavin Newsom, which is one of the many reasons that I recently moved from California, that literally went from listen to the science and listen to the CDC. The moment the CDC changed their narrative, he said, I'm no longer listening to them, I have other sources. And it's like, if this isn't a clear telltale sign that politics is driving a wedge in between, the people and reality, to pull a fear up so high. This is after every failed, bogus Russiagate, investigation, failed impeachment trials. When you start to investigate a president 17 minutes after he's inaugurated to try to impeach him before he's ever even done a job, it tells you that something else is up there, and so what is that something else? And that's what I wish the American people would unite over, Democrats and Republicans. Let's unite to say, what the hell is going on in our country? If we all worked at a giant corporation, this is a giant Walmart, and we're all employees, and we start to recognize there's some trouble in the leadership of our company, and that trouble could land us all without jobs and the ability to feed our families, I would think the employees would come together and go, no matter how much we like the CEO or the founder or whatever, it doesn't matter there's no sides here. There's just, let's find out what the hell is going on to try to save our job. And that's what we need to do as citizens, is to step forward and say, let's just drop all of the labels and sides and all of that and just look at, there's guilt on all sides. There's some dirty Republicans that are involved in this too. But I have to say, as a lifelong Democrat, I've done the homework and I've gone deep down the rabbit hole. And it's no coincidence that 9 out of 10 of the worst scenario cities that have handled the pandemic, that have the worst numbers for disease, death, and unemployment and economy are Democratic run. Those people that were placed in those positions know what they're doing. Andrew Cuomo knows what he's doing. That's not an accident that he killed old people, in convalescent homes. That's not an accident. These people know what they're doing, and they're doing it in the guise of this giant panic, so that we're all so confused and out of our ability to critical think that we all just think, well, all these mistakes can be made because we're all panicking right now. No, they're not panicking. They're panicking about being found out, but they're making deliberate moves that are costing lives and our future and bringing great damage. Last thing I'll say, and I'll turn the mic to you. For every 1% increase in unemployment, there's approximately 30 to 50,000 new deaths. I mean, we're at like 40-some% unemployment rate, whatever the numbers are. It's incredible of the new unemployment cases, and so that's simple math. At what point do we go, there's more damage being done with the abuse and the molestations and the violence at home and the divorces and the mental illness and the alcoholism and all and the deaths that are happening because of the lockdown? You think every American would be in the streets demanding answers and justice and liberty right now. But it's just a testament to how powerful the media is to control our minds, to think that if we go to the streets, we're immoral and we're selfish, and somehow patriotism and love for our country has been conflated with being a neo-Nazi. It's unbelievable.
Well, you're absolutely right. Everything has become political. Like, it's not about the science. It's not even about information anymore, because before they could keep feeding us information. I think a lot of people were, they didn't know what to believe, and they still weren't as skeptical as they were after. I think a lot of that was thanks to your video that went viral. I think it started, and I think the reason why it went viral is because I think people started seeing that things didn't make sense. And when they saw your interview with Dr. Mikovich, you realize, like, holy crap, this makes more sense than what they're telling me on TV, because I don't know. Yeah. Like, I'm talking to people who work at hospitals. I know plenty of people who work at hospitals, and I live in Massachusetts, near Springfield, Massachusetts, and they're like, no, they're like, there's nothing going on. It's dead. There's not this epidemic of deaths and all this stuff that's going on. And then you hear, there's just every single day I did a podcast, or every time I did a podcast, there was a new article, a new story talking about how the tests give false positives, about fishermen that test negative and then went out to sea 35 days later, test positive. Their story, CBS News using fake footage, all this, it was just so obvious after a while.
Yeah, how many of those stories do we need to see? I'm with you on that. Like, how many times did we see them using footage from Italy, emergency room from Italy, because we didn't have the level of imagery that we needed to terrorize people here locally, and so and they got caught. CBS got caught doing it. How many blatant, and they just, it was an editing error. Bullshit. I work in production, and the difference when you're in the editing room they know, and they had to actually bypass chyrons, the wording on the bottom. They had to actually blow things up and cover them up with their own chyrons. They knew exactly where that footage came from. And so then you say that in itself should be enough. We should go, well, if one, the fact that they funneled in New York everyone from other hospitals to one hospital to make it look crowded, the fact they shut down 2/3 of their floors because they're afraid that COVID would spread everywhere else, and so they could also then claim a shortage of beds, which they were still not able to do. All these, shortage of ventilators and beds, and none of it happened, and the people are still lining up like sheep, going, I'm still going to listen to you. And it's like, come on, people, seriously, you've seen enough. You put your common sense hat back on and look at the situation for what it is. We've been bamboozled. We have been lied to. This is the biggest scam against humanity ever. I'm not saying the disease isn't real. I'm saying they leveraged a novel coronavirus, which could have been as simple as the seasonal flu or cold. We could have managed it just like we always do when these things pop up, and worked right through it. But they saw it as an opportunity to kill the one thing that Trump was out there boasting about, incessantly. I mean, it's all he ever talked about was record unemployment, black unemployment, Latino unemployment. And they went, and when, I follow a lot of man on the street interviews. And back then, before the virus, when people were going around saying, what's going to get your vote? It's like the economy, jobs, it's like, I need to be working again. And look, I'm making more money right now than I have in 12 years. And so they saw that and they went, we have to stop this man right now. There have been assassination attempts, and like I mentioned, all these investigations and everything else. We need to stop him. And even if you agree that the man needs to be stopped, it should be done legitimately, not at the loss of human life, not at the loss of prosperity and jobs. And we shouldn't be punished for this because there's a war within politics. We're stuck literally caught in the crossfire of a political battle here. And it's doing super great damage. I wanted to mention one more thing, because you mentioned the testing. This is something that not too many people know. So the man that created the PCR test, his name is Kerry Mullis, and he actually won the Nobel Prize in biochemistry. He's on video being interviewed, saying after he won the biochemistry prize that this isn't meant to be a test, and they shouldn't use it to detect a virus of any nature. And he explains how it should be used. And the truth of the matter is, the test is the reason it shouldn't be used to detect a virus, and whether it's positive or negative results, is because you can manipulate it very easily. It will give you, this is a layman's term to a way to explain it, but within us at very micro levels exists everything. And this test, every time it cycles, supposed to go up to a maximum of 35 cycles. It picks up more granular detail every time it goes through. So it's like amplification, amplification, amplification. They've been running it like 45 and beyond cycles. And so literally it goes all the way down into the grain of your DNA and your cells and all that until it finally finds, okay, there's that coronavirus that exists in just about everyone, right? So these are all false positive tests. So where is Kerry Mullis? Why isn't he out speaking about this? Because he was very vocal that his invention should not be used this way. Where is Kerry Mullis? Oh, that's right. He died just before the pandemic was announced. We need to start looking at this stuff. He suddenly died of pneumonia just before the pandemic was announced. And they took his technology and they used it in a way that he has said publicly should not be used. And they're using this to generate, we are in a case-demic, not a pandemic. This is about cases, not deaths. And as we know, suddenly heart attacks, death from all these other things have just suddenly disappeared. So, do the math and understand that they're inflating the numbers for political narrative only. But we're still locked down, and if you wear your mask down below your nose, you're gonna get shamed by another citizen, another terrorized citizen, and that's another part of the design to get us all so frustrated. I was just at Whole Foods trying to get a burrito, and they're like, "We can't heat it up for you." Why? Oh, COVID. Like, I'm sick of this COVID thing, and I feel that frustration in me, and I'm like, okay. And my wife the other day, who's this gentle, loving, compassionate person, she walked her 10 feet from the front door to a table, and they come over and scolded her for not putting her mask on, and they walked away, and she says, she used some colorful language. And I looked at her and I said, wow. And I thought, if they can do that to Nadia, my very tolerant, loving wife, how many other people are sitting on a powder keg right now ready to explode? Could this be, the primer for civil war?
Well, I'm getting upset daily with this stuff. The thing is I remember when I was like really passionate about, similar to yourself, September 11th, that event really changed my outlook on things and going down some serious rabbit holes and whatnot. And, but it was hard to get people to be upset about Afghanistan and Iraq because people got to go to work, people got to go to school, people got to play with their friends, go to bars. So when you're going out, having a good time, you're like, what am I going to go do protesting Afghanistan? I'm like, I'm having a good time. It doesn't affect my life. If we're in a war or not in a war, not a big deal. But this is why I say this issue is the biggest issue, because now it has seeped into your personal life, your friendships, your family, your kids. Nothing pisses me off more than like the fact that, my kids are now homeschooled because I won't send them to school if they have to wear masks. I have masks exemption forms so that, I didn't want my son to not be able to play soccer. Being Portuguese, it's against my religion not to put him in soccer, so I have to continue it. But
how selfish and immoral of you, Ricardo. Can't believe.
But it's so I had to get he's the only kid who doesn't wear a mask at soccer, and I'm like, and all the parents are on the same page. Like the thing is too is like during this lockdown, one of the greatest tricks they had, and the No Agenda show called them muzzles, the masks, and it was so true because preventing people from. My wife was on a Zoom call with my family during the height of the lockdown. She's like, "Hey, look, everybody's on a Zoom call," and I was so mad. I'm like, get off that effing Zoom call. They live right there. There's no reason why we shouldn't all be hanging out. Everybody's healthy. And I was like upset. I'm like, you're giving into this nonsense. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, you're separating us. And I'm like, and guess what? If we all sat together. And it would happen. We would go get takeout or whatever. I'd run into somebody I know, and little by little, I'd be kind of feeling them out. I'm like, hey, this whole thing's kind of silly, right? Us wearing masks. I'm like, and like you realize like a lot of people were feeling the same way. And my podcast and many other podcasts were getting incredible feedback because people are like, holy shit, like all I'm seeing is the news. And I think everybody is falling for this. And then when I hear you talk to people and realize that like people are seeing what I'm seeing, it makes me feel like, oh my God, I'm not going crazy, And so this idea of separating people, isolating them, don't go see your friends, don't go see your family, don't, it only made it easier for the media to feed you any truth they wanted to feed you. And when people say this isn't political, look at Dr. Fauci when he's being questioned and they ask, well, do you think the protests / riots, most of them are riots, but do you think that they're having some effect in spreading the virus? And he's stumbling over his words because he's trying to find a political way of not helping, Trump's argument. It's like, do you need anything that's more obvious? I mean, you have Dr. Birx during a press conference. Like, I remember telling somebody, like, are you watching these press conferences? I'm getting worked up. Can you tell?
Go.
I'm like, you can tell during these. I'm like, she said during a press conference, we're being very liberal with these coronavirus numbers. If you die with the virus or by the virus, we're counting it as a COVID death. And I'm like, you guys are calling people who are questioning this conspiracy theorists while they're telling you on national TV during a press conference what they're doing. And instead of you actually listening to the press conferences and dissecting what they're saying, I'm like, you're listening to somebody's perspective on the press conference because you're putting on CNN. They're cutting out the parts that would actually, tell you the story. And they're telling you that Trump's an idiot and he's, this and that. I'm like, he has access to all the best doctors. He was in those meetings, and he had, he's listening to all these people. He's getting all the research from Europe or whatever. If he's not that scared of it, don't you think there's probably a reason for it? Like, don't you think that maybe he realized that there's some political BS that's going around that's happening? I mean, when he says, the hydroxychloroquine, I had Del Bigtree on my show during the height of this, and same thing, like the hydroxychloroquine. We talked about how like they didn't want to have any alternative cheap generic drug that could help, so they wanted to push some expensive drug. And so when Trump had the balls to say, I'm taking it, I'm like, you know what? Like that's pretty ballsy when he comes out publicly and says it. And and really kind of F you to Big Pharma, who was, who basically was trying to promote a expensive drug, a expensive drug that can patent. And that's another thing that, we haven't even there's so much. We haven't even scratched the surface in like the patents and like, what doctor, the guy with the bow tie, who he talked
David
about.
Martin.
Yeah, Dave Martin, all the stuff he talks about and the origin of drug. And there's just so much that, I apologize because I get worked up, but there's so much, and you're affecting kids' ability to be normal and socialize with their friends. These schools look like prisons. You can't be around other kids. At soccer practice, a kid falls. If this was 2019, a kid gets hurt, the coach immediately goes there, makes sure, gives them some reassurance that things are going to be okay, helps them up. Today, you know what they do? They keep 6-7 feet away, and they just, they have to walk at a distance to the parents and that kid who just doesn't understand what the fuck's going on. And that's the other thing too. You think parents and adults were having anxiety and having issues because of all the misinformation and disinformation, and one day they tell you it can travel in the air, the other day they say they don't, then they tell you the heat kills it, and then they tell you it doesn't. Like all that anxiety that of the unknown and the uncertainty of the future, all that anxiety that was building up in the adults, those kids were feeling that too. They're equally as confused. Try telling a kid what the fuck's going on. I try telling my son. In one way I try to work, use it in my advantage. I'm like, hey, it's because people don't take their vitamins and like they don't exercise. And luckily my kids take their vitamins and they exercise, they go outside. But the fact that they weren't even talking about your immune system, the fact they weren't telling you that, the majority of these deaths were in nursing homes. I mean, the fact that they weren't telling that ventilators, like 90-something% of people who were on ventilators were done. Like, it's people have to get upset, because if they don't fight back, if you just give in and like, well, I'll just wear a mask because it's like, I'll just do this. I'm like, it's never going to end. We still take off our shoes to go on an airplane. We haven't talked about hijacking a plane in forever. Well, and that was September 11th. So what does that tell you? Once you give some power, you never get it back. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I appreciate it. I agree with everything you just said. It's these incremental steps of surrendering our civil liberties, and we just forget about it. And then we wonder, that's how everything happens, in incremental steps, and then you finally find yourself in a place going, wait, what? How did I get here? I don't understand how we got here. Well, you said okay to this, and then it's like, this isn't much further than that. So, all right, fine. And well, okay, just a mask. Okay, I'll stand at a distance from the ones I love, and until you just go, and then, like you said, they don't go away. That's always the game. These things don't go away. We're still taking off our shoes, and we had one friggin' shoe bomber, right? That tried something with a shoe. Why can't we walk through the metal detector with our shoes on? I mean, we got this whole 360 thing. This, put our arms up and we do this thing. It'll detect if there's something in our shoes. We got dogs all over the airport now, and this is 2001 that this happened, 10 years ago. Or 20. Jesus, 20 years ago. What am I thinking? 20 years ago. And we're still dealing with the repercussions of protocols set for that moment. And again, but we don't see that. And so, where are we going to be 50 years from now if we keep giving up? I'll tell you where we're going to be. See China. That's where we'll be. It's really simple. And I still have friends that roll their eyes when I say we're in the middle of a communist takeover right now. But who doesn't roll their eyes? All my friends from North Korea, all my friends from Cuba, all my friends from Venezuela, and down the line. They've all called me to say, have me on your next project. I need to talk about this. This is what my family escaped. I'm from Russia. I'm from Ukraine. I'm from wherever. Like, we've seen this. And this is how it starts. And I'll tell you exactly how it ends. And every one of them you see so many people now, if you look at YouTube, but there's immigrants that are speaking out and saying, Americans, we live this. Please don't laugh it off. Don't shrug it off. Don't roll your eyes. This is what's happening in your country. Of course it's going to spread to the U.S. The U.S. is the trendsetter for the rest of the world. And they've been trying to overtake it for generations. And so, and now they're doing it, and we're in the middle of that right now, and it's all in the guise of this PLANdemic. And if we keep surrendering to it, I'll put on a mask sometimes. There are times I just flew, and it's like, you got to. It's like, if I want to be on the fly list, I have to succumb to this, and it's like, okay, look, I'm not saying to be a jerk and go out there and start fights wherever you go, and but don't fall prey to the conversation of, well, I'm going to do it because I have respect for my fellow citizen. Don't do it for that. Do it because you got to get on a friggin' airplane. And it's just an unfortunate part of reality right now is like, I'll do it for that, and then I take it off really fast, because I realize that it's not doing anyone any good. And as a matter of fact, there was just a study that was done, and it showed, some kids have returned to school in Europe, and it took their mask at the end of the day and did a whole, microscopic survey of it, and it was filled with mold.
Of course,
and people don't understand. They don't wash them. They understand surgeons. They're these little, they're disposable. They do something. They go and wash their hands. They take it off. They put it in the boom, it's done. They got another one. They put it on. New gloves. And we have this thing on all day long. It sits in the middle console of our car and collects dirt and dust and hamburger stuff all over it. And we put it back on. We pull it down. It's rubbing on our sweaty neck. And it's like, give me a break. This is the most unscientific protocol
And you're not supposed to be breathing in what you breathe out. You breathe out because it's waste. It's waste. You're supposed to breathe it out. I mean, they had I don't know if you saw these videos on YouTube where these guys would take these OSHA meters. So if I complain about my working environment, they would put them under the mask. It would immediately beep saying that you're working in a unsafe environment, unhealthy environment, because you're not getting, your oxygen levels are so low. So the thing, it says on the mask box itself, it will not stop the spread of coronavirus.
Did you see the doctor who did the study where he was smoking a vape and he was blowing through different masks? Have you seen that one?
No.
So he put on every kind of different mask. He inhaled, put on a mask, and it goes either right through it or. And so I'm on the airplane and I'm sitting next to this poor young lady, probably 30 years old, and clearly paranoid. And I'm sleeping, and my mask while I was sleeping went down right here, and I get a rough tap on my shoulder, which is not one of my favorite things. And I wake up, and the flight attendant is going. And what they don't understand is, it's one of these little surgical guys, right? And what they don't understand is you pull it up here, and then it comes out here. So now I'm sitting next to somebody sitting here. Their head is here, and now my breath is going right to them instead of straight ahead. And then she's wearing a face mask, a shield, literally says face shield across the top, a plastic face mask. So it's blocking her from spitting this way, but everything she's breathing is going right to me. And it's like, just a little bit of logic, people. We can look at this and understand, just the slightest understanding of physics and gravity would have us understand that this is not only not working, but you're now funneling whatever danger may be there right to the person next to you. And so, but it's a false sense of security, and it's about compliance. And until we get that, until we understand that it's all about compliance, it's a visual cue. I mean, we are followers. And I know that pisses some people off when they hear that, but come on, look at our trends. And if there's some of your listeners who have bowed out of that game completely, I honor them. Please show me how to do it, because I find myself still stuck in that game of going, okay, this month it's skinny jeans. Oh, skinny jeans are out. So what kind of, okay, cool. So we wear our pants lower now, wear pants up. Oh, these kind of tennis shoes are in right now. Oh no, it's, and we just follow each other. Everything we do, style cues, mostly physical hairstyles. We all have beards right now. But when I was growing up, a beard is an odd thing for like a younger man to wear. It was just like, you have a mustache? I mean, that was the 70s, man. Wake up. But now it's back and it's cool, and hipsters have mustaches and all of that. So we follow these trends. We're so monkey see, monkey do, that this is one of the quickest ways to get people to take the visual cue of compliance. And they'll go, okay, they're all painted, and I find myself doing, I go in and I go, okay, let me see how many. I see a couple masks. Everyone's wearing a mask. Okay, put it on. But if I go and I go, there's a lot of people who aren't wearing masks. Okay, cool. I'm not going to wear a mask. I find myself, I go, wow, check that out. Like that's my monkey see, monkey do. I'm waiting to see what everyone else is doing. But when as long as we know, if we're having to play the game just because we're in this, this interesting, precarious time right now, I'll play the game a little bit, just so I can get on the damn airplane and get to Georgia and talk and come back. Or get to my table and eat, but I don't kid myself during the process of playing that game that there's any real viable value and moral purpose for me doing what I'm doing. I don't get stuck in the game of, well, it's safe and it's respectful, and this is weaponized morality that they're using. It's one of the quickest ways to get people to fall in line, because we don't want to be bad people. We don't want to come off as selfish. So you see all these virtue signalers, right? It's like they're in their cars with their mask. They're taking their selfies for the social media with their mask. These politicians who walk up to the platform, and they make sure, they weren't wearing it 20 feet ago. And they put it on, they walk up, they make sure, they hang it around their ear, and they let it hang off, and they talk to the damn thing. You see reporters out in the field, they have one cameraman, 10 feet away, and they're by themselves and they're wearing a mask, trying to talk through a mask and give you a report through a mask. You know, you just go, like, stop it. Stop it. You look foolish. And you know, I don't know. I'm going off too, but it's just, I think we're all getting to that point of getting sick of it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been sick of it, and it's so frustrating because it's like do you not realize you want to tell people, like, you do not realize that like months ago it was about flattening the curve, and we weren't even wearing masks then, and now all of a sudden all we're talking about is cases, and nobody's taking a case seriously, because guess what happened? Like Cristiano Ronaldo, you know, one of the most famous athletes in the world, he just got tested positive. I think he's getting retested, but he tested positive for the coronavirus. Now one person will talk about he might pass away. We might lose the best soccer player in the world, because not even the mainstream media is taking this seriously. Not people are just talking about cases, just cases. Nobody's talking about dying. People, just cases. So it's like, it's same thing with like people have compared it to like global warming to global climate change. It's like, well, we, you know, apparently we were wrong about some of these predictions. Let's change it to it's global climate change. It's like we just keep changing the goalposts and keep changing what we should be scared of. And it's like, if it's just cases, if all these athletes who are testing positive, we just say, hey, stay at home for a little bit and you'll be fine. We'll see you next week, you know, after a quarantine. Yeah. Then how dangerous is it? You know, you have to put in perspective, like, okay, obviously it's not that dangerous. If we're not even concerned about somebody dying if they test positive, it's not even a concern at all. Like nobody's like, oh my God, Cam Newton. Oh my God, Cristiano Ronaldo. Oh my God, Donald Trump. Even people who dislike Donald Trump, nobody said like, I think he's going to die. No, nobody. The people were just like,
a lot of people said, I hope he dies.
Yeah, that's true.
A real testament to how wonderfully tolerant one side has become.
Absolutely. So when this, I know this show.
Let's do this real quick, Ricardo. My phone's about to die, and I do want to move into the upside, because there's a major upside to all of this, and we've been talking about the heavy stuff. But I have a faulty cable here connected to my phone. Give me a second so I can hook it up, because my phone's going to die, and it's got 1%.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right, hopefully this does it. Let me see here. I don't know what's going on, but it's not taking a charge. Is that charging now? Oh. I've been having some phone issues. I actually have a new phone. I just have to go get all my data transferred tomorrow and switch over. I may have been hacked, because my phone is. Anyway, if it dies, this has been awesome. But let's go as far as we can here.
Yeah.
Did you want?
I was just going to say, how did your life change? I heard you talk about waking up the next day having anxiety, and all, you know, obviously Wikipedia pages were locked. Everything was taken down. I mean, it was a real attack on you as a person and your work and your life.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely. There was a moment when I woke up, probably day 3, when the part 1 was, fully viral out in the world, and I woke up and I kind of had this fleeting thought of like, oh, it was all a dream. And then as I came to, I realized, oh, it wasn't a dream, it's real. And I have to eventually open my phone and see my face everywhere under the headline of what a horrible person I am, and what new lies are they going to tell about me today. And it was difficult because my weakness, my kryptonite, which is a weakness I think a lot of us have, and a lot of us have to overcome rapidly, was just the not wanting to be disliked, just wanting to be. I've always kind of been that friendly person that everyone got along with, and I made it too important of being agreeable with my tribe. And the greatest gift has been breaking that and just not caring anymore. Not being a jerk and being arrogant and thinking I can just say whatever I want to say and insult people and hurt people. I don't mean that. I mean that I can speak the truth, my truth. I can share my opinion, and I don't really care if you agree with it or not. And I really don't care if my numbers grow on social media and if I have likes or dislikes. I'm not trying to do any of that. I think we have to give that up. I don't think it's any coincidence at all that Facebook could have called it a thumbs up, or that's cool, or I agree, but it's I like you. And it's an odd thing. I remember when that first came out, it's like likes, like I like you. It's like that's an interesting thing, because they're playing into the psychology of this need to be liked, this need to connect with our tribe and to be accepted, right? And so it was a real big thing for me to deal with. I had no choice but to deal with it, because it was happening globally, and I was suddenly the world's most dangerous propagandist, conspiracy theorist, Illuminati, cult leader, far left, far right, whatever they wanted to call me. It was just just whatever it took to get people to not listen to me was what it was about. And of course, it's tough when you go, you see your name in Rolling Stone and Time Magazine, all these major publications on John Oliver and whatever, and you're like, this is not the way that I thought that I would land in any of those pages, but here I am. And then it kind of, something happens, and the other side of it is liberation, is a great deal of liberation, to just really come into this place of going, I have everything I need. This kind of goes back to what we said at the beginning of this conversation. My life is complete in so many ways. I'm married to the love of my life. I have two extraordinary young boys that I want to spend every moment with. They're fun and funny, and it's just 6 and 9 years old, and just these two stages of these little beings becoming men, and all the funny, hilarious, interesting questions they ask, and so my life is full, right? With what I have right now. And so do I need 160,000 friends on Facebook? And what if I just gave up this whole idea that we've all been just hypnotized with, like, capture your audience. And it's really the secret sauce to the success of PLANdemic. Is I said, no, I'm going against all of that. I'm not going to turn on one ad. I'm not going to capture one email. Brian Rose did for our premiere, but we've never asked for a single email. No barriers to entry at all. Just watch it. It's free. It's yours. Do whatever you want with it. I've had people reach out to me and go, is it okay if I subtitle? I said, no, it's yours. It's your movie. You don't have to ask me for permission, anything. Well, we were thinking about editing a little clip out of it. It's your movie. You understand? Like, there's no way that I'm going to come back at you with any lawsuit.
That's exactly what I do with my show. My show's open source. I tell people, get the conversations out there. I don't care where you post it, where you upload it. Put it. I'm like, getting this information out there is much more important than me trying to get the most likes or subscribers or downloads or whatever.
So that's what I said at the beginning of this talk, when I said the whole world is topsy-turvy and inverted. And if we just understand that, we start to look in the other direction, because that's what a big part of the magic trick is, particularly for the propagandists, right? It's understand how a magician works. A magician is an illusionist, and a big part of the illusion is distraction. It's oh, check this out, fire, ooh, a dove, whoa, look over here, and this is the trick hand, and it's moving the ball around, the card around, whatever it might be. And so we have to get smarter to where the media says, look at that guy over there, and we go, oh, what is that? And we'll always see something when we look in the opposite direction. And that's how I found a lot of the truths that I found as I go, they're pushing really hard for everyone to look over there, so I'm going to look over there. And there's always something there. It's interesting. You go, well, why aren't they talking about that? That's the real story. That's interesting. Oh, maybe that's the story that they don't want to talk about. And if so, let me explore and research that, because that probably holds some secrets. And that's where you find this stuff. And then you do your deep research and you go, I know what's up. I know how the game's being played right now. And there's a lot of psychological manipulation and reverse psychology and things that are being used. These people have been, I explained this to my sister-in-law the other night, because she was at the Red Pill and talk, and she heard all these speakers, and she's like, it just scares me that these people that are behind all of this are just so damn clever. Like, they understand us to a level that we don't understand us. And I broke it down. I just said, well, think about whatever, a mechanic, an artist, a heart surgeon. It's like, you or I couldn't come close to performing heart surgery right now. It's a very delicate craft that takes incredible skill to understand every single move that happens. But there are people, men and women, who have studied that and they understand it. And when you understand that we have been so distracted, we're watching football and whatever we're doing, right? That we're obsessed in. These people have been studying the human psyche, the human mind. And so, body language, all of it, they can read us. They know what it's going to take, what kind of false flag it will take for us. We'll go right from marching, no more war, to bomb them. It's like we'll change on a dime. And they know that about us. They know that we're adjustable that way. But they just have to, and emotional, through emotions is really the way to do it, through morality and emotions. And so they understand us in the same way that a computer technician, I put up a computer, I'm just like, whoa, what is all that stuff? But there's people who can look at every single little solder point and, and just fix it. And these people understand you and me so much that they know what words to say to make you emotional, and then what to do once you become emotional. Now we have you in an emotional state so that there's certain parts of your brain and your chemistry that have actually been activated or deactivated, and now they can plant an idea in you and suddenly have you do something, say something, harm someone else. And and I'm watching that with a lot of my former Democratic Party. I'm watching really good people that I love. I've always loved them, and I will continue to love them. But I'm seeing them say things online, and even to me, that I'm like, what has happened to you? Like the fact that you're wishing death upon our president, the fact that you're wishing like this is, do you hear yourself? Because this is not who you were 5 years ago. This is not who you were. And then the fact that it's like, can you see what's happening right in front of you? Do you see that there's some big masquerade happening right in front of you, and the evidence is just glaring, and it happens every day. We see evidence of it, but somehow none of that is adding up to be enough for you to question something? Like what's going on in the mind that you can witness this over and over, that media lying to you every single day, over and over, getting your hopes up. Russiagate, we've got him against the wall. Reality, he's and then to find out none of it happened, and then not to go, well, I no longer trust Rachel Maddow. I would like that. My favorite people, I follow them. If they slip really bad once, I'm done. If it's something I can excuse and understand, well, I can understand how they made that. But I mean, if I find them pushing a false narrative one time, I'm gone. But I see people tune into Rachel Maddow over and over and over. She's the biggest conspiracy theorist on television. Nothing that she has said has come true. She repeats false narratives over and over and over. The fact that Biden is still out there on the trail saying Trump has never condemned white supremacists, said there are fine people on both sides. He condemned all the white supremacy 44 seconds later after he said fine people on both sides. And that in itself should be enough for people to go, how did the media keep that from me for 4 years? That in the same speech that he said, fine people on both sides, 44 seconds later, watch the whole speech. He says, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists and the KKK. Those people should be completely condemned. That is not who I'm talking about. He's talking about two permitted groups that were having a discussion about whether or not they should take down a statue. Fine people on both sides, people who thought the statue was racist, and therefore they're fighting against racism. Those are good people. Historians who actually understood that statue, that the person depicted in that statue was actually not a racist. He didn't want to fight in the Civil War because he didn't want to fight in war, and he didn't want to ruin Virginia. They actually knew something that the other side didn't know, and they were having a discussion. The far left and the far right get involved. And that's not who Trump was talking about. So whether you love him or not, we should still want to know the truth about what the leader of our country has said. But we don't. We want to believe he said that. because it fits our narrative and it justifies our hate for him. And in that, something horrible happens within us. Our compass, our guide that helps us navigate life to inform what's dangerous, what's safe, what's real, what's not, gets askew because we're choosing to side with something that's not real. And every time we do that, we lose sense of that natural system that helps us navigate reality. And we just need to stop doing that for our own health, for our own mental health, and for our future.
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning when nobody's voting for Biden. You're either voting for Trump or against Trump. You're not actually voting for Biden. I mean, people are just, they dislike Trump that much. And and again, like, no, I mean, I'm a political atheist. I don't, I'll have people on each side. I've had Roger Stone on the show. I've had Dr. Richard Wolff, who is a Marxist scholar and professor. I'll have anybody on, and I'm open to exploring ideas and challenging ideas. And through conversation, I think we can go through a journey of trying to figure out how we really feel on about certain things or whatnot. But I think too often, our tribal DNA gets involved, and you don't look at the information and then decide, like, okay, this is what makes sense. You pick a team and then you defend that team. And the thing is, like I've said on the show multiple times, we have been tricked into believing it's completely okay to argue about sports, to argue about things that aren't important, but don't talk about politics and religion. And it's like, what we should be saying is, let's learn to talk about politics and religion. Let's learn to talk about the things that are actually important in our lives.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, the definition of ignorance is saying I'm not going to take in any more information, and I'm just going to be here, and this is where I stand regardless of any new information. But the problem is, it's easier to trick somebody than convince them they've been tricked. And when when somebody's been tricked and you're trying to tell them that their worldview might be wrong, or the way they perceive the world could be a illusion, their immediate reaction is like, no, that can't be, and
Right.
and that's why, these conversations, I know so many people who listen are like, what can I do? And just spark the conversation, have the conversation, talk to people. I know, like you were saying, I would post something online, and immediately anybody who hated Trump would act like it's me exposing big pharma or telling people they've been they've been lying to them.
Was pro-Trump.
Yeah, it was pro-Trump. I'm like, can we just discuss this thing,
Yeah. I have a story about that. Can I share real quick? I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely, because people probably want to hear you talk more than me.
I don't know about that. But so a recent example of that is I had a couple of friends of mine reach out to me, and this is so interesting. And they're like, you have a lot of influence. You need to go online right now and denounce Trump. And I said, what? Why? I've never endorsed Trump. Why would I denounce him? Well, because your film is clearly pro-Trump. And I said, what in my film is pro-Trump? What, like, name one thing to me that's pro-Trump. Like, well, just the whole premise that he thinks coronavirus is a hoax. I said, well, first of all, he never said that. That's another lie. He never said it was a hoax. He said that the Democrats blame it on blaming the coronavirus on him was another Democratic hoax. So what was pro-Trump in my film? And it's like, it basically comes down to, like, well, anytime you talk about freedom or going up against the system, it's pro-Trump. And I've said, this is really interesting because I spotlight two presidents in PLANdemic, two, Reagan and Trump, and I throw them both under the bus. And nobody catches on to that. And that's what I mean when I said, our compass becomes askew. They don't even see that. They don't see that during a really scary part when I'm showing all the fear mongering and how the system is pushing mandatory vaccines, I end it with Trump saying we're going to mobilize the military and get the vaccines out. That's not a positive pro-Trump statement. That's me putting him in there with the fear mongers. Then I show Ronald Reagan signing the Childhood Vaccine Act, Compensation Act, which gave total immunity to the vaccine manufacturers. And it was one of the major issues in the trouble that we're in with Big Pharma. Totally threw Reagan under the bus, which is the sacred cow of the Republican Party. And because for me, I don't care what side it falls on. It's about truth. And both men, Reagan did that and Trump said that. And so I'm not here to be loyal to a party. I'm here to tell the truth. And yet, one side sees it because there's a feeling of patriotism, there's a feeling of rise up, take your freedom back, take your and that has suddenly has become a Trump policy. And I don't think they realize that all they're doing, if they don't like Trump, all they're doing is empowering him. Because if now you're making Trump name synonymous with freedom, that's who I'm going to vote for. Then, if that were true, it's like if it's between wearing masks for the next 2 years and having my liberties taken away, if Trump is the guy who's fighting for my freedoms, and if that's the message they want to give to the world, then everyone's going to vote for him. Like, they don't understand what they're doing. It's so counterproductive to their plight to stop him that they keep promoting him by not being sensible enough to look at what's being said, to go, there's nothing pro-Trump in that movie. I was incredibly careful. Everything went through 3 email chains and was scrutinized. That's why there has not been one fact checker that's been able to take one claim out of PLANdemic 2. And we've gone toe-to-toe with them online, every single one of them, and they walk away defeated because there's not one thing in there that's inaccurate. And so I knew what, going in, that it's like I have to be careful of, like, I actually took apart, because Obama signed the NDAA, which legalized propaganda against the American people. It meant he signed it, and it made it possible for the U.S. government to create propaganda to lie to you. And I had a beautiful piece in there of Obama doing that. And I took it out only because I said, I'm no fan of Obama. I want to make it clear. I voted for him once, and then I was disgusted by the second term. But that said, I took it out because I said, the left is so hysterical right now that the moment I say something about Obama, then, I can't have anything negative about the left, because then it's not going to reach them. And all I care is that this reaches them. Why? Because I want to win some election for some politician? No, because I want them to be safe. I want them to come out of fear. I want them to live their lives. I want their children to be healthy. I want the best for them. And so because of that, I'm very considerate of every word that's spoken in anything that I produce. So I chose to put Trump in there because I also knew no matter what I'm up against here, they're gonna slant it, slant me to the right. So let me throw Trump under the bus. Let me throw Reagan under the bus just to prove to them that I'm not biased in that way.
Well, the thing too is that people should have a stance on the issue after observing all the information. And if a specific political party tends to agree with you, based on your observing the information, then that should be okay. Like I should. The thing is, like, people, if Trump says that the virus isn't quite as serious as they've been saying, all of a sudden, it's like if you're on the left, you have to resist that. Then it has to be serious and it has to be a big deal because Trump is saying the opposite. And it's like, so people, I mean, after the Iraq or during the Iraq war and when we went to Afghanistan, like, I was I'm still anti-war, but I happen to agree with the left. The left was on my team. I was anti-war. I'm okay with that. I don't care that if somebody is on my team in regards to a specific fight, then I don't care what political party you're in. Now it seems that more people on the right are the ones fighting for us to have our lives back. We don't get to hit reset. I mean, if you live till whatever the average age is, which is actually higher than the or lower than the average age of deaths of the coronavirus, but whatever the average age of life is, like, you get there and that's it. And what you're doing, or what, not you specifically, but in general, what people are doing they're giving up weeks, possibly years of their lives of being able to enjoy their lives to the fullest, to be able to be with their loved ones, and giving it up forever. You'll never get that time back. Time is the most crucial thing. It's the most important thing. You can always make more money. You can't make more time. And once that time's gone, it's gone forever. And when you're telling people, you're restricting people from being able to live their lives and do things like go to games together with friends, go to a concert. I mean, how many lives, are changed forever? Businesses that are shut down, because guess what? The big box stores, they're fine. But the ones that are going to be shut down are the mom and pop places, and then that's going to lead to, how many alcoholics or or needed to go to AA meetings, couldn't go to those, what type of state they're in, what type of mental damage long term are we going to deal with because of this anxiety and whatnot. So it's like, to me, like this election and just in general, like this isn't even about politics. It's about whoever is on my team in regards to getting our lives back. That's who I'm going to be, defending, and that's who I'm going to be with. Yeah, I have plenty of issues with Trump, but in regards to this one issue, I mean, and there are issues with the Operation Warp Speed and all that stuff. I just had Whitney Webb on. We talked a bit about that, but he has done things that other presidents haven't done, like initially talked to Robert Kennedy Jr. about vaccines, him being able to fight against Big Pharma in regards to talking about openly about oxychloroquine and the benefits of that and some other things. Like, he has done some things. I mean, I do feel like he throws you a curveball every once in a while and you're like, you don't know like where he stands, but we also don't know the complexity of the game that he's playing. And what
that's a really good point. And I'll give you my opinion of the game that he's playing. And I kind of hesitate to do this because there's part of me that feels like, but I want to say it out loud because I kind of know it's true, and I want to be on record at least saying it before it happens. And that is
when your phone dies.
Yeah, probably right. Early on, there was a meme that used to go around. Not the nicest meme, but people that were kind of sick of the cancel culture and all the stuff that was happening, they would pass a meme around and say, I can't wait for the day that Trump endorses oxygen because then the liberals will stop breathing. But there's truth in that, because literally, as outlandish as that sounds, you mentioned hydroxychloroquine. This was a breaking point for many doctors that I interviewed. I interviewed dozens of doctors, several dozen. And a lot of them had said, look, and a lot of them were Democrats, but they said, the moment I was so happy when Trump mentioned hydroxychloroquine because I've been prescribing it for 40 years. And as one doctor said to me, and without one side effect. And he goes, no, let me correct that. He goes, I had two side effects. Two people had upset stomach. That's it. He said, but 100% success rate. And it's WHO approved. It's a good medicine. And so it was a breaking point for a lot of doctors, because they said when Anthony Fauci came out and said it was anecdotal, any professional in the medical industry knows that that's bullshit. And right there is when I went, uh-oh. A lot of doctors said, some said when I saw PLANdemic 1, I disagreed with it because it was outside of everything that I'd been taught that she was saying. Vaccines don't work and several things. And I had a really hard time believing that Anthony Fauci was a bad guy. But then they said to me, when he said that, we all got clear that he's lying. And that lie is going to cost tens of thousands of lives. And it did. Tens of thousands of lives. And we just have to wrap our brains and hearts around that for a moment. These people willingly, willfully, consciously decided on a narrative that a medicine that works, that people could have taken as a preventative measure too. They could have taken it before. Like the elderly could have started on a very inexpensive regimen. And a lot of them that passed away because of COVID would still be here today. So I'm talking about people's mothers and their grandmothers and their fathers and their grandfathers. It's not a little thing. We're talking about the loss of someone's loved one. Could have been prevented if it weren't for these politicians. And I had been saying for months and months, like remembering that little meme about, Trump endorsing oxygen. I would say he needs to stop endorsing what is real and start endorsing the stuff that's not good. He needs to come out and be so pro-vaccine, and he needs to come out and say, rush them to market right now. Let's get these things together. We're going to develop a vaccine, and we're going to do it within 18 months. And the moment he says that, this narrative is going to collapse. This narrative that Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci are pushing, that they can somehow produce a vaccine in 12 to 18 months, when the soonest one has ever been invented is like 7 years, 7 to 20 years, you know. And I was saying all along, God, I wish Trump would be smart enough to use reverse psychology to come out here and say that. And he did. And so I think this whole, I will call it right now that I don't believe he took remdesivir in the hospital. I think that's absolute bullshit. I think he says he took remdesivir, so people will start looking into it and understand the side effects of it, how it works, and they will rail against it because Trump took it and now he's touting it. And unfortunately, he has to play this game. But that's what I think is happening right now. And I think he probably took hydroxychloroquine. But if he were to say it, then it would just be, you know. So he chose to take the medicine that is actually produced by one of the most faulty and corrupt vaccine manufacturers on the planet, that has all kinds of problems and side effects. And it seems like a very weird move. And then Ivanka comes out and she says something about, you know, the need for everyone to get vaccinated. I hate to blow this because you know, but again, it's just my opinion. I don't have inside information on this particular point. It's my hunch, but mark my words, we'll find out later that they finally woke up and realized if we really want to help people, we're going to have egg on our face and say stuff that we don't believe, say stuff that our side, a lot of our supporters are going to revolt against. It's not going to feel good. It's not going to look good for us. We're going to look confused. We're going to look bought and paid for. But if we really want to save lives, this is the only way to do it right now. Because if we tell them what they really need to take to save their lives, they'll revolt against that. If we tell them that the bad medicine is good, they won't take it and it'll save their lives. And so I'm super clear after watching many cues and pieces of evidence that's the game that's being played right now, and it's a good game. You know, I think it's a game that has to be played ultimately just to help those that really need help right now, to end this thing so we can get back to you know, our lives again.
Well, it does kind of make sense because the left has been much more pro-vaccine. It's the people who are fighting for vaccine freedom and safety, because that's a big thing. Like my kids are unvaccinated. I'm very open about it because I want people to know that when your pediatrician says your kid's going to die if he doesn't get vaccinated, that's not the case. That there's plenty of parents who have unvaccinated kids who are healthy and fine. My kids have no issues whatsoever, not allergic to anything, no neurological issues. Healthy, I mean, too healthy where it's like we're tired trying to keep up with them. But you know, they're examples of how when the pediatrician tells you like it's life or death, that you have to shoot them up with a hemp shot, you know, or you have to shoot them up, you know, it's something that's a sexually transmitted disease, you know, or you have to shoot them up with this or that or whatever. I mean, and that's the thing, like what you're saying, it does seem to make sense in regards to what Trump's saying, because the left is now, I mean, you heard Joe Biden say, well, we don't want to get a vaccine too quickly now, you know, like it's like, wait, you know, so it's like, wait, this might be working, you know, like this whole idea. I mean, they have gotten tons of money for development and research. You know, I mean, that's probably unpreventable, you know, because you have the whole world telling you that like things will get back to normal once we get a vaccine. It's like we have a vaccine for the flu virus. Is the flu virus disappeared from the face of Earth? No, it's a part of our everyday life. Like it happens every year, you know, that we get the flu virus, but it spreads, not a big deal, you know. And so it's like, you know, nobody's really talking about like what's the end game. The end game's a vaccine. Like by the time the vaccine gets developed, it's quite even possible that the virus could change slightly and not, you know, not even be compatible. So it's there's a lot, you know, when Dr. Buttar was on London Real, and he had 100 doctors on the call. I don't know if you saw that. And and it's like, are all these doctors crazy? I'm like, are all these doctors crazy? I'm like, you get 100 doctors, and these are just the ones who are willing to be on screen talking about this. You get 100 doctors doing this. When you have Dr. Scott Jensen, who's been on my show, you know, he's getting harassed because, great guy. All because he's saying that, hey, I've been writing death certificates for over 35 years, and there's something sketchy about, you know, these new CDC guidelines. Like, he's not political. He doesn't even like being called a senator. You know, he's like, I'm a physician, you know, and actually 2016 physician of the year in Minnesota. And yet, like, all of a sudden this guy, that's the thing. I'm like, people, when when the big tech was telling you that a documentary was too dangerous to watch, but yet you could watch basically the whole documentary as long as somebody was narrating over it or calling it or debunking it, then what does that tell you? So you're too dumb to watch a documentary on your own and come up with your own conclusions, but apparently it's completely okay to for a guy to play the whole documentary on YouTube. This and as long as he's trying to debunk it or supposedly debunk it, or say that whatever, just give some type of opinion that he dislikes the documentary, then it's okay. What does that tell you?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, look, I was doing some research yesterday, and I watched these montages of Democrats. This just blows my mind, because that's the only party that I've ever identified with. But I've watched these somebody was making a big deal about Trump saying to the Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. He said that during the debate. What a train wreck that debate was for both parties. But they were making a big deal about this. This is a dog whistle and it's violence, whatever. And then somebody ran that with, cutting back and forth between things Maxine Waters has said and all these Democrats saying, when you see, Maxine Waters, when you see them in restaurants, when you see them, let them know if they're a Trump supporter that they're not welcome there. And all these vile people saying, Keith Olbermann just said, Trump supporters are maggots and they must be exterminated or something of that nature, this Nazi language, and you're like, all the people that are pointing their fingers and calling one side fascist and Nazis are literally acting as fascists and Nazis. And it's just crazy that they can't see it, that they're like, you think you're going to fight fascism with fascism? And you're going, they're doing everything that they're blaming one side for, but I don't see the same evidence on the right now. I don't see the same vile comments of, there've been a couple of people who have said things, but I just see this call for, hate and in the last video that I created for another purpose, there, it's like members of Antifa saying, when somebody ran up on a Trump supporter who was there for a prayer service, in Portland, they ran up on them and just shot him in the head, and then Black Lives Matter protesters, came out, a woman on a bullhorn, and said, I don't feel sorry for this man. It's just like taking out the trash. She doesn't know who that man is. She doesn't know if that man has children. It might be the sweetest guy in the world. He just shows up because he wants to be part of a prayer group. There was no strict violation or direct violation that this man committed. There was nothing that he had done to inform this person that he was a bad guy, and then you see the reverse situation. You see, someone like Kyle Rittenhouse defend himself. There's definitely things you can say about a 17-year-old having a gun, and I certainly want my son to have had that type of a gun, visibly present in such a situation, volatile situation like that. I think that was a bad move. But he was a clear act of self-defense, and he killed people that, the first guy he killed was, 6 convictions of raping little boys, and yet they are condemning, and the guy chased him. There was a shot fired behind him. The guy grabbed for the barrel of his gun, forced this kid to fire his gun. And he is a mass murderer and an evil white supremacist. There's nothing in his history that even suggests that. Yet the person he killed, almost all of them had major records, and the main guy, the guy that was mostly in question whether or not it was self-defense, was a horrible human being who was actually pissed off because he was trying to set a dumpster on fire and push it towards gas pumps to create a massive explosion. And it's like, none of that matters. Child molester trying to create an act of terror by pushing a dumpster on fire towards the gas pumps, and then deciding to chase a 17-year-old kid while people are yelling, kill him, shoot him. Someone fires a shot. The kid turns around, he grabs a rifle, and the guy gets shot. It's like, and yet nobody wants to look at that side of the story. It's like, and that's the kind of stuff that the more we do that, the more we shut out part of the narrative just so that we can reserve our hatred for the person that serves us to hate. The more we F with are one of the most important aspects of of our bodies, our systems, which is our ability to navigate our lives, our attention, the ability. Every time we do that, we like passing the wheel to somebody else and letting them steer for us. And we need to stop that no matter what side it falls on. You know, if the Republicans do something bad, I'm first to say that was bad. Democrats do something bad or good. You know, one of the times that I got accused of being, the first time I got accused of being a Trump supporter was he signed prison reform. That's a big fucking deal. That was something Obama promised for 8 years to do. This is the most racist law that we have ever had since before the Civil War, that it disproportionately incarcerated brown and black men for crimes that weren't even violent, and put men and women in prison for life, grandmothers in prison for life for maybe having a joint or something like that. I mean, it's horrific law. You know, it made crack cocaine a major offense while it decriminalized cocaine, which is the richer white man's drug. It was an incredibly racist bill that was written by, oh, interesting, Joe Biden, interesting, and established by Bill Clinton. And Obama promised to undo it, and he never did. And he made some excuse that he was being blocked by the Republicans. So out of spite and out of ego, whatever it was, I don't care at this point, Trump went in and said, that's bullshit. This is how you do it. And he signed it. And people got free that deserved to be free. And that law is done. And then he created the First Step Act that now helps rehabilitate the prisoners back into it. It's a major thing. And I went on Facebook and I said, can we celebrate this? And I mean, it was just a resounding no. You can't give him a win. And I'm like, it's not about Trump. I'm celebrating these beautiful grandmothers and grandfathers and fathers and uncles and people that are coming home to their family, their loved ones, that shouldn't have ever been taken away from them, that have done 20 years locked up for nothing, for a drug perhaps like marijuana that's now legal in their state. You know, how effed up is that? Imagine sitting there in prison going, so that thing that I went to jail for, that I'm going to spend the rest of my life locked up for and never be able to hug my child again, is now legal in the domain where I was busted. And they're not undoing that for me. Like, imagine sitting there like that.
And you want to talk about government lies? There's no better example than that. I mean, for how long did the government tell you that weed was the equivalent of cocaine and heroin and these street drugs, and it was the worst thing ever, and it led to this and led to that, and all of a sudden it's like, well, if we get a cut of that tax money, then how about we've just put it around every corner? It's like they don't want you off drugs; they just want you on their drugs so they can get paid. You know,
that's the problem with hemp and CBD and all of that is marijuana. It helps us. It helps us. You know, it can be abused like anything else can be abused. But I know grandparents who smoke every night because it's the only thing that works for their arthritis. You know, I take CBD with THC in it every single night. It's the only thing that overcomes my insomnia. You know, and yet, in some states still, my little vial of liquid CBD with THC in it, I could be arrested for that. I think, it's such a minor amount, it's probably a misdemeanor, but it's still, you just go, are you kidding me? Like, this is not, we don't do this to get high. This is not a recreational thing. This is a medicine. Again, it's one of those medicines that comes from the earth. And so everything that comes that was provided for here to work in conjunction with our human bodies has been demonized because they can't patent it. And we have to wake up to that game. That's why I made InDoctorNation all about patents and conflicts of interest. And I didn't get into any of the hot button subjects at all. And this is actually a point of contention with some of my crew who kind of went behind my back to create, sections about, social distancing and mask and hydroxychloroquine. And then when I said, I'm not going to put them in the movie, they were upset. And they didn't get it at the time. Since then, they said, "Oh, okay, now I understand. I understand now what you were doing." And I said, "I don't want to give them. We're all being conned into this game of just go over here and fight about this thing. Just keep busy. Keep talking about the masks. Keep talking about social distancing. We want you fighting about all this petty stuff. So over here, we can do some really good business." And so I said, I'm not going to play their game. I know their game, so why would I play it? So I'm going to talk about the things, interestingly enough, PLANdemic 1, the most, debunked movie of all time, yet there's not one point in it that anyone can clearly debunk. I put a $10,000 challenge out online saying, let's do a live debate, $10,000. Here's an escrow account. You put $10,000 in, I'll put $10,000 in. If you can prove beyond the shadow of a doubt, not just that the science isn't settled, but if you can prove one thing that Judy Mikovits or I said in part 1 that is absolutely verifiably inaccurate, you win my $10,000, not one taker. I went up against a couple of the doctors who wrote open letters to me, shameful open letters to me, and I got a hold of them. And I said, you're a doctor, I'm not, but I'm willing to debate you. And again, here's an escrow account, put $10,000 in. And, I got these lame excuses, these pathetic excuses of, I don't want to give any more energy to these lies, whatever. It's like, no, you can debunk them now. Don't give energy to them. If you really know, I mean, you had enough time to write this open letter to say that, what we did was a slap in the face to frontline doctors and it's all propaganda. And I'm saying all you have to do is prove one claim and you win my $10,000 and you get to prove to the world that you were right in your letter. Not one taker. Not one. Not even a doctor was willing to take that challenge. Because they would go and they'd look at it and they'd go, well, I think they're wrong here. I disagree with this, but I can't prove it. Well, if you can't prove it, then how are you debunking it? How is it the most debunked film of all time if no one can prove that? Maybe we should look into both cases. And I'm open to being wrong. And there was a point when I said, you know what? One thing nobody's doing right now online is admitting when they're wrong. And I have no problem doing that. So I told my crew, I said, let's find one claim made in either PLANdemic. I want to just find one, there's got to be one thing in there that's, whether it's said by me or somebody else in the film, I just want to show the world what it's like to actually admit you're wrong. Because nobody's willing to do that these days. And I really wanted to. I was going to make a video and say, look, there was one claim that we made. And quite transparently, it's also a great PR piece because if I'm able to say this was wrong, it also validates the rest of the stuff that I'm able to say, but the rest is true, right? So I wanted to do it for both of those purposes. We found a couple things. We said, this doctor is he's pretty legitimate, and he says this is wrong. And I get on the phone with him. I'm like, can you explain to me? I saw your critique of the movie and whatever. Can you explain to me? And one of them said, well, he said, the one thing I disagree with was Dr. Mikovits said there's no vaccines on the RNA schedule that work, that the benefit outweighs the side effect. And I said, so there are? And this doctor said, I wish I could name him. He's very beloved doctor, but I won't do that without his permission. He said, well, I think you'd be very hard pressed to prove that none of them work. I said, well, can you prove that any of them do work? He said, well, yeah, some do. He said, but it's the collateral damage that makes me hesitate. I said, what do you mean by that? And so he explained it to me, and I finally said to him, I said, what I hear from you is if I break my toe and I cut off my foot, I've solved the broken toe. And he said, yeah. And I said, but is that really a cure for the broken toe? And he said, well, therein lies the problem. He said, so Judy's wrong because some of them do take care of the broken toe, but now you've lost your foot. And I said, so what you're saying is some of them do cure the disease they're intended for, but now you've lost your immune system. And he said, that pretty much sums it up. And I said, that's not working, though. That's not working. And so I agree with Judy on that. I don't think you can say she's wrong, because if that's the case, yeah, good, you got rid of your polio. Now you have no immune system for life. Now you're susceptible to every disease that comes along. It's like, that we have to find a better solution to that. And we would, if the system wasn't so damn greedy, because Western medicine is a wonderful thing, and we could find the solutions to all of this. But Western medicine, because we have these horrible laws where none of the vaccine manufacturers are held liable for their mistakes, and they're actually incentivized not to do safety testing because it's more costly. And what people don't understand in the business is that if they do a whole clinical trial and a drug fails, it can't be used again. So all their investors have lost their money. If they don't do a trial and instead they test it on the people and they go, oh, we had 400 adverse reactions, pull it. Now let's rename it, and now it's for horses or canines. They do this all the time. Now our investors will at least see their money back so they can keep investing in more drugs. And so it's a game they play. It's all business, but it's the system that incentivizes the corruption. And that's what part 2 indoctrination was about. Like, let's just get rid of the corruption, the patent problem, the conflicts of interest, and then we can actually incentivize people. Because right now, when people have this incentive to, like, if I can patent a vaccine, I could become incredibly wealthy. And so we can't let hydroxychloroquine take over, because then there's no need for the vaccine, and then our profit is gone because we can't patent hydroxychloroquine. And therein lies the problem. So that's when you take really good people and you put them in a position of, I can make tens of millions of dollars if I just hide this drug, or I could reveal the drug. And unfortunately, it's the sad part, but it's a reality we have to awaken to, is just because someone's a doctor, goes to school for 8 years, doesn't mean they suddenly become a good person. They're still people. And some of them actually get into medicine for bad reasons. It's a field that makes a lot of money. It's a field that there's a lot of ways to wrangle tens of thousands of dollars and use your status and the acronym before your name to become very, very wealthy. And it's why we associate doctors with being very wealthy. And so any field that is prone to manifesting wealth is also prone to corruption. And so there's a lot of bad people that get into the medical field. So this whole idea that someone wearing a white jacket has the title, it just has to be someone you trust. No. See Anthony Fauci.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've talked about this numerous of times where we put these people on a pedestal. Like, if you go to school for some type of, if you're a surgeon or you study some type of medicine, all of a sudden you have a better moral compass than the average person.
Yeah.
If you're a politician or a police officer, it doesn't matter what you are. Like, we're all human. We all have flaws. We have, possibilities of giving in to desires, corruption, all those things. It doesn't matter what you decide to do as a career. Some of the most moral people I know aren't doctors or police officers or whatever. I mean, sometimes they're just the average
farmers.
person. Yeah, farmer. Somebody who's
right.
who's connected with nature, and
right.
Honestly, so some of those people are also some of the ones who have the least depression and anxiety and whatnot.
That's
because
right.
They're connected with nature, and they're eating food that is grown, from their own hands, and living a more peaceful, simple life. I was born in northern Portugal, in Chaves, and my parents were farmers. They had a simple life. They were, my dad was one of 12. My mom was one of 7. They didn't have any material wealth, but they were, they were farmers, so they always had food. They always had wine, and they had these traditions of making wine together and farming together. So you always had community and friends, and that's what really brings you happiness. And go ahead.
It's such a great point you're making, because it's so critical. Just consider the bizarre way that we choose the leaders of our nation, and the leaders of our local cities and counties. Just think about that. Like, we choose them based upon their promises that they rarely keep. We choose them based upon their charisma that very well may be learned or just inherited and have nothing to do with an actual good quality. Because most salesmen, most charlatans, the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world, these are all very charismatic, well-spoken people. But we choose our politicians based upon that, instead of like really the content of your character, and maybe we should get to know how you've parented. Maybe we should get to know the relationship with you and your children, because if your children want nothing to do with you, maybe you're not fit to run my city, and if you don't understand, if you haven't done, I call it the inner work. We're born into this life, and we endure a lot of social challenges, and a lot of we inherit a lot of habitual patterns that are not our own, and we develop this thing we call the ego to help us survive. At some age, we decide that life is dangerous and tricky, and we're being bullied or whatever it is. So we have to develop this persona to survive our life. And sometimes that persona is is incredibly smooth, but it has nothing to do with who we really are or what we'll really achieve in life. But it doesn't matter that somebody went to Harvard. Well, maybe it depends. What did they study? And how does that apply to the job that they're doing? But we're so into identity politics and kind of surface headline accomplishments that we don't ever really, like when my wife and I look for a babysitter, a nanny for the kids, we don't just go, "Are you nice? Do you smile? Do you whatever?" It's like, it's a serious thing. You're going to be with our children, 8 hours a day or whatever, especially when our children were little. It's like, we got to get to know you. And what's your temperament? And do you have any records? Have you been violent? Do you drink and drive? Are you going to, do you have habits we should know about? Like, there's some real critical, like nuanced persona traits that we should know.
Right?
Yeah. How do you deal with all of that? And do you have do you understand if you're going to run for president? Like, what is your background? Like, that's the one thing I do love about Trump. It's like, this is a giant corporation. And when you're dealing with trade and trade deals with other, hostile nations on all of that, you should be an international business. You should have some international business experience. Because if you don't know how to deal with the Japanese or the Chinese or the Russians or whatever, you haven't sold hotels or worked on, different time zones and how they work and understand, how delicate of a situation it is when you're dealing with a Chinese man who's concerned or a Japanese man who doesn't want to lose face, and that there's certain ways to greet them and when to bow, when to touch, when not to touch, when to make eye contact, when not to. These are all incredibly important things that international business people learn. And so you're not going to run a nation that is kind of the mecca of all other nations, the center point, the apex, without understanding international business. It should just be a, like, that's something that you have to have. It's a mandate before you even step into that. But we don't think about these things. We just go, I like him, I don't like him, I like her, I don't like her. Oh, she's rude, she's a bit what. It's like we're so stuck in whether we like them or not that I think people, that's unfortunately, there's a lot of qualities that Trump has with some people that he's just not likable. But Obama, on the flip side, was so likable. I shed a tear when the man was inaugurated. So likable. 6 or 7 new wars, droning innocent people, failed gun running sting operations that literally put thousands of very deadly weapons into the drug cartel's hands. Being part of the selling of 25% of our uranium, to the Russians, Canadian and U.S. uranium, like stuff that I would even say that's borderline treasonous. That's dangerous. You're putting us in danger now by giving a nuclear weapon power to an adversary. Like horrible thing. But yet, just like Bill Gates, there's this quality of the man where you just go, it's like he's so good. He talks and he's got his little voice and you just get sucked into it. And his sweaters and his wife sitting next to him and you just get sucked in. But it's like, at what point are we going to get smart enough, streetwise enough that we just go, let's pay attention to what these people are doing. Let's pay attention. Let's really pay attention, because people just ignore Bill Gates' past because they just want to believe the story. And so do I. The second richest man in the world, once given away half his fortune to make the world a better place. No, the second richest man in the world has made a 20-to-1 profit on vaccines. 20-to-1, unheard of. And he knows exactly what he's doing. And in the same way that everyone says Jeffrey Epstein was so much fun to be around, such a nice guy, complimented everybody. So he's raping children. So he's selling children to, perverts all over the world. So he's, pulling kids out of villages and, ruining their lives forever. And who knows where those bodies end up, but he's super charismatic, and it's like, at what point are we going to go, that's not enough. That's not enough. What are you doing in the world? And we need to know that. And we have to raise our standards so high that we don't. I see stuff Joe Biden does every day, and I'm just like, I cannot believe that this is even a consideration for people to vote for this man. He says one racist gaffe after the next, and his gaffes, they're very telling. When he says poor kids can be just as bright and successful as white kids, you go, wait, what a second. What does that mean? That means white kids. He just made that a racial thing. Oh, and he just said, that he's able to do what he does to some black woman is stocking a shelf somewhere. Like this man sees people of color as the lowest. If you don't vote for me, you're not black. It's like it just goes on and on and on.
Come on, man.
Yeah, and it's just like you just go, at what point do we just get, card players know, they call them a tell, right? The card players, like really good card players, they're very observant and they have a tell. And that's why they wear sunglasses when you see the poker tournaments and hats and everything, because they know that they can't hide. The moment they see their hand and they blink, the other players go, got it. I know how to play the hand now. He just gave me the tell. Joe Biden is giving these tells out to the world with a massive megaphone, and yet everyone goes, it's okay. I'm voting against him because Trump's the racist. What did Trump say that made him a racist? What did he say? Because I still don't know what that thing is. I don't know what it is. That Mexicans are drug dealers and rapists. He was talking about 13. What is it called? The gang, the cartel gang, MS-13. And he was also saying when Mexico sends their people, they don't send their best. They send rapists and drug dealers. Well, the truth is when Mexico doesn't send immigrants. They send the worst of the worst. The prisons are overflowing, and they say, leave our country or spend the rest of your life in prison. When Mexico sends their people, they send their drug dealers, their drug cartels, their rapists, their gang members. And so that's not a racist statement. It's not. And so, let's just get clear on what's real or not. Again, it's not an endorsement for everyone, but as long as we live in this illusion and we're calling one guy who's actually never said anything racist that I'm aware of, that really everything that I thought was racist, as soon as you dig into it, you go, no, he totally condemned white supremacy over and over. And his last debate stage thing, I understand. It sucks that he just lacks the ability, but so many brilliant kind of, businessmen, Elon Musk, I've interviewed him, Richard Branson, interviewed him. These men are not articulate men. They're incredibly tough to edit. Richard Branson, if somehow you listen to this, I bet you won't, but I'm sorry, but that was the toughest interview that I've ever edited in my life. He interrupts himself in every sentence. He stops. He starts on a trajectory. Oh yeah, let me tell you about Virgin Air. When I was, it's like, wow, man, make a statement and finish it, please. Because it was just like, it was incredibly difficult to get a full statement out of the man. And some people are just like that. And Trump has a horrible speech pattern. So we can pick at him all day long if we want to. But there are other things that are more important than picking at bad speech patterns. Like there are real things we need to start paying attention to. Because if we do, we can bring this country back into balance. And on that note, I do want to shift into the upside of all of this, if we could.
Yeah, I was going to get to that because you did bring up Bill Gates, and
yeah.
I think that's one of the upsides of it is, people like James Corbett, who's become a good friend of mine throughout the years. People like him and many others, myself, we talked about Bill Gates, and everybody would be like, oh, it's just conspiracy theory. He's not, he's no eugenicist. He's no, even though I'm like, have you listened to his justification on why he wants to spread vaccines? Because he thinks that if there's less disease, people are going to have less children because they're not as afraid of disease killing their children. Like there's all this justification for his depopulation ideologies, and I'm like, this guy is dangerous. And it was something that a lot of people a little bit ago would basically brush off and just say, no, not him, not Bill Gates. Like he's a computer guy. He's a fine, there's not.
They're still
nothing.
saying it. I still see it. I still have people come at me all the time.
But haven't you seen more people much more open to the idea of being skeptical of Bill Gates and the vaccine conversation alone? Because prior to this, the vaccine debate was, when the Vax documentary came out, so many, I had the CT Freedom Alliance was on my show. They were fighting Connecticut in regards to, they're trying to get rid of the religious exemption, and like that was a huge issue right before all this lockdown and whatnot. So many states trying to get rid of the religious exemption, and you had the anti-vaxxers, and which were, in many cases, like myself, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm one of those. I want people to have all the information and come up with their own conclusions. Yeah. My problem, I have parents that come to me and they're like, Ricky, after listening to your interview with Del Bigtree, after seeing your interview with Dr. Brian Hooker, after seeing your interview with whoever it may be, they're like, I can't, I feel so guilty vaccinating my kids. I'm like, it's not your fault, dude. I'm like, it's not your fault. You can only make decisions based on the information that you had. You made the best decision as a parent based on the information you had. What you should be pissed off about, the same thing I'm pissed off about. And that's the fact that the other side of the argument is being suppressed from you. You didn't have all the information to come up with a
that's right,
intelligent conclusion, and that's what you should be upset about. I don't push for people to not vaccinate their kids. I push for people to have access to all the information, and then come up with their own conclusions. What's riskier, vaccinating my kids or not vaccinating my kids? But that should be something that you should decide as a parent after you observe all the arguments and all the sides of the all the different perspectives. But when they're suppressing it from you and they're force feeding you truth with a capital T, and they're saying you're not intelligent enough to come up with your own conclusions and figure out what's best for you. I'm getting worked up again. I'm doing it, Mickey. These topics are just so, because when we're talking about our family, our friends, our loved ones, my kids personally, I mean, I've had so many battles with people over this vaccine debate, and I'm just like, I would never put my kids in danger. I love nothing more than my kids. Like, it's been the greatest gift ever. I mean, there's becoming a parent is like me trying to understand war with a veteran. Like, I'll never understand. They can verbalize it as best as they can, but unless you experience it, you can never quite understand it. Becoming a parent's the same way. Like, when you talk to other fathers, and I've pissed off quite a few listeners because I'll talk to many guests about being a dad, and it's just like, it's hard not to talk about that experience. And then they're like, people be like, hey, will you get to the good stuff? Will you stop talking about this dad stuff? I'm like, you're probably not a dad, because I'm like, when you become a parent, there's something so magical about it, and it makes you so passionate. I mean, I was doing this podcast way, before I had my kids, but it only made me more passionate about it because I don't make any money doing this. It's all about, I mean, I wish I did. I wish I could do this full time, but it's not the point. Like, I just want to put this information out there and try to give my kids a place better than they received. And if the only thing I can do is start my own little ripple and spark these conversations, and maybe just get some people to go down some rabbit holes, maybe question a few things, maybe watch a documentary they might have not watched or whatnot, and just do my part in just kind of provoking thought, then I'm doing something. And we can all do that. And I mean, that's why people like yourself, your documentary, I mean, it's gonna, same thing. I'm good friends with Jason Burmis, who did Loose Change with Dylan Avery, and the same way that his documentary, I think, opened up so many people's eyes. And he says, hey, it's not perfect. I've made some mistakes, and I've had people on my who've been on my show, like Ryan Dawson, who's like, oh, well, he was wrong about this. I'm like, it's not the point. Like, people make mistakes. His heart's in the right place, and there's so many people who it changed their perspective on the world, and woke them up. I mean, for a better term, woke. I know woke is a funny term, but it's and I think your film did this exact same thing for a huge generation of people who are going to be huge influences on the world. They're going to one day be interviewed, and they're going to talk about, like, hey, what was your red pill moment? And they'll be like, it was a PLANdemic documentary.
It's been amazing what the movie has done. The first one's been seen over 1 billion times now, and it's just, of course, there's no way we could have planned for that. And I just got today a photo. I wish I could show you, but it's on the phone that I'm using right now. Somebody in Venice sent me a photo that somebody wrapped their whole car in a PLANdemic, InDoctorNation, see the movie, and all these statements, and the truck is going around with all of that, and there's every anti-lockdown protest in the world, there's big PLANdemic signs in different languages, and it's been amazing to see the impact that it's had. But it's really a testament to like the people know something's up, and the unintended consequence of this lockdown has created something very wonderful, and that is people have had the time to do the one thing that they've never taken the time to do before, which is their own research. And they're in their rabbit holes, and they're digging, and they're looking, and they're finding their own truth. And I've never heard from so many people in such a short period of time how that they've just done a 180, that they just woke up and they understand what's going on, and a lot of parents that are forgiving themselves because they now understand why their child is immune compromised or has all these food allergies or whatever it might be. They understand that it was part of the decision that they made. And then they understand that the vile game that's being played to prevent people like me and like you and so many others that have been there long before me that have been trying to forewarn people. And I think the one thing that we have to do as a public is to start to really pay attention to the movement of the social tide. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So, like right now, people are jumping ship off the Democratic plantation, as they call it. Right? They're jumping ship, but it's only off of one side, and that should be very telling for people. There's not a big movement. My buddy started the walk away movement, Brandon. And that thing is growing massively right now, and there's a reason for that. And there's all these doctors that are waking up to share something. Nobody's waking up to say, I thought the pandemic was fake, and I just woke up to realize, no, it's totally real. This is as dangerous as they said it would be. Nobody's saying that. All the wake up is in one direction. All the jumping of ship is going in one direction. All the, there's no parent going, I didn't vaccinate my child, and I've never met him, and I really wish I would have. There's a lot of parents saying, I vaccinated my children, and I wish I wouldn't have. It's all in one direction, and that is a very important thing for us to pay attention to. Why is it going all in one direction? And if we can start to slow down enough to observe that and go, why is everyone jumping off this ship, and why is everyone realizing this, but they're not realizing the other side? There must be something here that I'm not seeing. Let me look deeper into this. Like that's how I play the game. I just go, I don't see it now, but I'm noticing the trend here. This is interesting. Like, where's everybody going? And I start to look at where they're going, and I go, oh. Well, that doesn't ring as true to me, but maybe I don't know. And I look deeper and I go, oh, there is truth in that. So we have to start paying attention to the movement of the human tide, where it's going, because there's a reason for it. And especially when you can say it's all in one direction. All these things I just mentioned, they're just in one direction. Doctors aren't waking up to say, I didn't believe in it, now I do believe in the pandemic. Nobody is saying that. It's the other way around. It's doctors waking up to go, I completely bought into it. I put on the mask. I shamed everybody. I closed down my shop. I did whatever I did. And now I'm starting to feel like we've been bamboozled. That's the story. And there's truth in that. And the more we recognize those subtle trends and we do our best to understand them, the quicker we can move together. I like to bring, use the metaphor of flocks of birds a lot, because I still baffle at their ability to fly 1,000 birds and turn all at the same time and move in these incredible patterns. And but we as humans, birds with little tiny brains, and we with this big advanced humans inventing all this technology and innovation, and yet we can't fly together, man. It's like we can't even drive on the freeway together. And we need to get better at that. We need to get better at moving together, because right now what we do, because there's so many external forces, and we put our attention and our trust in the wrong forces. Imagine if all those birds were listening to different voices. They're clearly listening to one broadcast of intelligence somehow. It's not an audible cue from the lead bird. They're tapped into something else that allows them to move as one. And we're listening to all these random forms instead of listening to ourselves. We're listening to all these fake gurus, all these all these fake journalists, all these corrupt politicians. And as a result, we're trying to fly and flock, and everybody's just, it's chaos. And so we need to come back into that, slow down a little bit, and to really to look at the human organism is very intelligent. And if we can observe it deeper and go, why is the human organism moving in this direction? That's interesting. What if I moved with it? What if I actually found out, listen to them and say, what is it that you know? Why is everyone going this way? What's going on? Well, we've discovered that the pandemic was manufactured. Real virus manufactured pandemic, and it's being used for political terms to leverage this and to bring us to our knees. So we'll accept socialism. We'll say, oh, thank you. That's what it's like to get payment from. And there's a lot of people that love it right now. There's people who don't want this. They're home, playing video games, and they're getting money from this, and they're like, this is awesome. Smoke a bowl, play a video game, don't have to work. This is cool. And that's kind of sad, because other people.
I'm not even against that. I'm not even against the idea. Like, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. My problem is that you're preventing other people who don't want to do that, who do want to go out and pursue the business that they're passionate about, that they loved, or put out their life's work. To me. No, continue. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I do have a problem with it. No judgment for smoking a bowl or playing video games. That's not the judgment. I care because if somebody has so resigned to life, they've given up their purpose so much that sitting on their butts all day long and doing nothing productive to move their life forward for themselves, for their health, for evolution itself, for the human species, to be a player on the field, to have dreams, to get out there, to just be engaged in life and relationships and love. I find that sad. I find that sad. If they just want to take a break and play video games, that's cool. I have no judgment about any of that. But if they've bought into the system that's somehow a viable way to spend their incredibly intelligent system, and that's the way they're going to invest their lives, I find that to be sad. I think they're a victim of the system that has severed them from their life's purpose and their dreams. And I would say those people are not happy. They're just content in their distraction. And that's okay for us all to veg out sometimes. And I love nothing more than just doing a binge watching series for 2 or 3 days. And I can totally do that. But when that takes place, of being engaged in the world and going out there and finding, like being engaged with love and holding someone's hand and having that feeling for the first time and making a piece of art and walking in nature and swimming in the lake, and when it takes place of you being engaged in this beautiful experience we call life, I find that to be sad. Personally, I find that to be sad.
Didn't we learn that during the lockdown, that even people who maybe didn't necessarily love their job, when you prevent people from being able to do anything, and you just even if you're sending them a check, the majority of people are going to still be super unhappy because they realize that, like, I need some purpose. I need something more fulfilling than just sit here getting a check. And
absolutely.
I think we learned that.
Yeah, we are learning that. But there's still some people who haven't had enough. It might take them 2 years of receiving checks and sitting there until they go, okay, how fat do I need to get? How unhealthy do I need to get? How many cigarettes do I need to smoke here sitting on my bed? Until I finally go, this is not the life I intended, that I was intended to lead here. And I don't mean people have to go out and do massive things or anything like that, but being a functioning part, and if nothing else, not even being a functioning part of society. You can detach from society. That's okay. But how are you interacting with the natural environment? Like what are you doing? Are you working with your hands? Are you developing new brain cells and skills are you expressing yourself as an artist? Because we're all artists in some degree.
But you know this. I mean, the school systems prevent us from exploring those things. Our schools, they've done studies where they take young kids, I don't know if it was first grade, kindergarten, whatever it may be, and they ask all the kids in the classroom, how many of you guys think that you're creative? And everybody raised their hands. And every grade they ask, and less kids raise their hands. Why? Because they don't tell you to be creative. When we say, oh, this person's street smart and this person's book smart, what we're really saying is the book smart person is really good at just regurgitating information.
That's right.
But the street smart person maybe you know, has good critical thinking skills. Maybe he focused more on, you know, writing music or painting or doing something like you said that was more creative. And you know, I wrote music growing up, poetry, all this stuff, and I would get people like, oh, how do you do that? I'm like, we're all capable of it. The difference is that when you were paying attention in school so you can get that high paying job that supposedly was going to bring you happiness, I was flipping my paperwork around and drawing logos of all my favorite bands and writing poetry and all that stuff. And I never turned it off. I'm like, so they told you to turn it off. They told you, like, stop being creative. Don't focus on arts. Like, don't worry about that stuff. Like, do you know, focus on business, you know, and numbers and all these things that are very cut and, you know, black and white and very cut and dry. And, you know, there's no creativity with it. You know, where I was always fascinated with philosophy and things that like answers that had no, or questions that had no answers. And you were constantly
I dropped out of school just for this reason. You know, I made it through my sophomore year and I was just like, I'm done, because I can't, you're not challenging me, and I'm not learning what I want to learn. The stuff I'm learning, I can guarantee I'm not going to have a job that I need this for, you know, and there's things that I want to learn that you're not providing for me, which is a perfect segue into telling you that the next film series is going to be stopping the indoctrination of our children. So this is what we're in pre-production on right now, and we'll start it very soon. But this will allow us to expose the puppet masters that are behind all of the Marxist, harmful curriculums that are being injected into our schools around the world right now to indoctrinate the next generation to be self-hating, country-hating, hateful little, you know, beings. And
you used a nice word. You really wanted to say something else.
Oh yeah. And we'll expose the puppet masters that are behind this, because we're literally there. You know, if you understand the communist manifestos that were written years ago, decades ago, you understand that they're all being played out right now. This is all part of the plan. That's why we call it PLANdemic. You know, it's everything that's happening right now. The race wars, everything is all part of the manifestos. They literally spell it out. This is how we're going to do it. And this is what it's going to look like. And they'll defund the police. They'll create autonomous zones. Everything that we're watching right now is all part of the manifestos that are decades old. So it's no surprise, but but parents are up in arms right now because they don't know where. As you said, you're homeschooling your children. We started a new school with a bunch of families. Started our own school, and so we can teach our kids the way we want to teach them. And we're gonna create a movie to stop the indoctrination of our children, to give a bunch of positive hope and solutions to families and to people of new economic systems, ways to stay out of the minutia of the maze that we're all trapped in, and to live the life that we came here to live in conjunction with nature, and to reestablish the domain of our attention, to rebuild our immune systems. And to rebuild the American family and all families, because there's been a concerted effort, even in Black Lives Matter website said they're going to disrupt the nuclear family, you know, and that's a scary thing to think of, and it's clearly.
Well, you know what's crazy is some of their issues, the Black Lives Matter issues that they're fighting for, it was because the family was broken apart.
Totally.
I mean,
totally.
the locking up dads, you know, a bunch of black and minority fathers, and giving single moms the very hard thing to do of trying to raise a child and also try to make ends meet and work or whatnot. That's why that's why you have so many minorities in prison, is because these poor kids had no chance, because the likelihood of you ending up in prison, I think, if with one parent compared to two parents, I mean, it's much higher.
I was raised by a single mom on welfare, so I know this story very well. This is not just a black thing. And my mom was incentivized to stay single. She dropped her dreams because she was constantly afraid that if she lost her government support, she wouldn't be able to get back on the program again. And so she stayed in line. She didn't travel. She didn't buy anything nice, because if a caseworker came out and saw that we were spending our government paycheck on a nice stereo or a nice car or whatever, that we might lose that support. So it literally incentivizes you to stay in poverty and to stay single. She had boyfriends and she sometimes hid them. She wouldn't let them move in. Some of them wanted to move and get her a house, a better house, and she said no, because if the relationship doesn't work out, then I may not be able to get back on the program again and feed my 4 children. And I watched my mom die of cancer. My brother died of AIDS, and 23 days later, my mom died of cancer. So this is a very personal fight for me. A lot of people don't know that. So I could have been a product of the system, but I overcame it. And it's a miracle that I overcame it, because I had a lot of people tell me you're going to end up dead or in prison. And without a father, I understand why they were telling me that now. I didn't have that input. I didn't have that discipline. And I had to learn a lot of things the hard way. And now I can really sympathize when I see these young minority men that are making very bad choices in their lives. I understand it because I was there. And it's a miracle that I'm here right now and doing the work that I'm doing. And it's a message I like to pass on to people that are stuck in that system. You can overcome it, and you just have to come out of it. You have to reconsider the narratives that they're pushing on you. And these narratives are the most destructive things. The stories that are the things that literally guide our attention. And so we have to rethink these stories. They're not our stories. They're stories that have been authored for us. People have told us what our life is and who we are, and they've subscribed these stories to us. And they're not ours, and we have to disown them and put that pen back in our hand, reauthor our lives, and say, who am I? And it doesn't take long to remember that. We just look back on when you were children. Remember the dreams you had, the dreams of being a superhero, a policeman, a ballerina, a doctor, a nurse, whatever it was. There's a reason that we chose these professions when people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because it's the first experience we had of an adult figure performing something that actually helped us. So it tells us that there's an innate function within us that is here to help, that is here to pull the cat out of the tree, that is here to help the child's little boo-boo or injury. Get my cat to stop. That when we realign with that, we often, when we're kids and we're asked what we want to be when we grow up, we choose a profession not because we really want to be a cop, but because we witnessed a cop helping somebody, or a fireman, or whatever it is. That's why a lot of kids from my era wanted to be an astronaut, because that was the time when we touched the moon and whatever. So there's this feeling of like, oh, wow, humans are extraordinary, and they just went to the moon. I want to be that. So all it really shows is that we're meant to be something extraordinary. And so don't worry about the profession. It's the essence of the profession. The little girls who want to be a ballerina because they sit and they watch all the people around them going, oh, and they watch the magistry and the magic of the human body doing things with such grace and poetry that they just went, we are amazing. We are amazing. That's who I am, and that's what I came to express. And then society gets in the way and it says, no. You're here to work. You're here to make money for me. You're here to listen, and you're here to obey, and you're here to follow what they do. And so these narratives that get passed down, every time I hear somebody, when I hear somebody telling young black men that the world is against them and every cop is hunting them and nobody loves them, it's like that's the most destructive, racist narrative that you could ever tell a young person. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is that he believes it, because we always find what we're looking for. And if that young man believes that story, he will then see evidence of it everywhere. If you believe all women are crazy, or whatever it is, these stories that some men adapt to, then suddenly you find crazy women everywhere you go. You're a woman, you believe men are all dogs because you have some experience in your life, 2 men back to back that cheated on you, so you say men are dogs instead of those 2 men are dogs. Then suddenly you realize your whole life of men, all you've done is attract dogs in your life. Actually, you've attracted good men, but somehow they became dogs. Why? Because we all serve into the expression that we're granted in our environment of our friends. And if everyone sees us as bad or whatever, we'll ultimately become that. And so we have to start telling each other better stories about who we are and why we came here. And stop telling these horrific stories of oppression. Whether it exists or not, that's not the point. whether people existed. This is not my white privilege. Stop all that bullshit narrative and stop it. Because the moment we tell, I study a lot of Black scholars. I've learned probably the most from the Black scholars that I've studied. And they all have a very interesting story. The ones that are highly successful, and they're off the mental plantation, they call it. They had someone sit them down to tell them, as a young Black person, this is what you're going to hear in America. This is the story you're going to hear. And if you believe this story, you will end up in poverty, dead, or in prison, or all three. I'm going to tell you a new story. And if you believe my story, then the world is yours. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve. And it's about that story we're told, and then we tell ourselves. And so if there's anything that I hope your listeners can take from that, is just to re-examine the stories that you've been told, or the stories that you tell yourself, and recreate those stories in the direction of where you choose to be. Because if the worst thing you can do is believe those stories. You're ugly, you're not smart, you're a bad person, you are incomplete, you didn't quite live up to your expectations, and maybe you had a father or someone who was just so sad themselves that they used to tell you that this is who you are. And the worst thing that happened is you believed them. And the best thing that can happen to you right now in this moment is to disbelieve that moment, undo it, and create your own story. And to know that what you were given, because I used to hold all those stories too until I realized this life is divine. I can't call it divine and somehow think I'm a mistake or that I didn't work out. That doesn't work. It doesn't fit that way. I had to actually go, what if my life, I can look at it and say it's a sad life, raised with a single mother, didn't really know my father until I was in my teens, raised on welfare. I didn't even know what real money looked like. I thought all money came in little booklets and it was multicolored. And was a mama's boy in many ways. My mom was my rock. There's a lot of my family that didn't accept me because my mom had a child with a womanizer out of wedlock. So I was a reminder all the time of her sin. And so feeling that disconnection from my immediate family, was something that I started to create a story about. I must not be as good as them. But the moment I got that in my life, and I said, well, what if it's just divine? What if I experienced this, and then to watch my brother die, and 23 days later my mom died, and I felt like an orphan all of a sudden. Like my rock was my mother. She was my security, and she's gone. And it was the greatest gift ever, because then I had to go, well, then what do I have left here? I have me. I have some incredible sisters, 2 incredible, loving, much older sisters, but they have their own lives. They're married. They have children. And so I ended up in Hollywood by myself, this kid, on a U-Haul truck, going, I don't know what to do. And of course, every photographer tried to take advantage of me in Hollywood. It's as vile as it is. All this shit would happen, and it's like, so I've been there. I've been through it. I struggled. I was on the streets. I took some very bad turns. It could have had me ended up dead or in prison, but I overcame all of that because I rewrote my story. And I said, I get to choose. No one's going to choose my life for me. I'm going to choose my life. And I just started recreating who I am, what matters to me. I was raised to love people. I was raised to appreciate and respect old people, to protect children. I was raised to respect women. I was raised by a mother, 2 sisters, and a gay brother. I was raised with that. It wasn't an option to respect women in my life. Yet I'd become a womanizer when I was in my early 20s. I had to just stop all that crap and just go, who am I trying to prove this to? How much sex do I need to have? Who am I proving this to? Can I just be a good person? Can I be honest? Stop hustling. Stop lying. Stop trying to get things. Stop trying to manipulate life. And just how about you just be present and care about others? So now I'm on my pedestal. Sorry, but I'm fired up because this is one of the most important things I think that we can do right now in this time that we have together while the world is still locked down, is to really reevaluate how far off track we got, how we got off track, and how the hell we get back on track right now and live the rest of our lives from a place that fulfills us, and that also leaves the world in a better place than we left it.
Absolutely. And that's why being a parent is so important, because our kids, if we're not in their lives, if we're not influencing them, if we're not telling them don't be a victim, you can have control of your life, you can do things, you can do, pursue your passions, then who's influencing them is all the people who are trying to pull at their desires and subconsciously brainwash them. Like we talked about, the media, TV, marketing, big tech. Zach Voorhees has been on my show a few times. I know he was in your, in your documentary. Yeah, great guy. I got to get you on one of these. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I do these shows with Sam Tripoli and a couple and Charlie Robinson, who wrote the Octopus Global Control, and Midnight Mike from the OBDM show. We do these things called the Union of the Unwanted. And your movie was actually one of the reasons this all came about, and it kind of became a thing of its own. But one day, me, Sam, Charlie, and Mike, I like getting people I enjoy talking to and try to put them together and just share thoughts and ideas and do these swap casts. And we're talking about the censorship issue. We're talking about your documentary and during this lockdown, just the height of it and how important it is to fight back against it. And Mike's like, it's like all our shows are being censored and shadow banned and all this stuff. He's like, we're kind of like the Union of the Unwanted. And I'm like, that's a great fucking name. So we end up getting a bunch of people. Ben Swan, also a friend of yours. I know you were interviewed by him, and he hosted your documentary on IS.
Ben and I have an announcement coming up really soon.
Oh,
we're doing
awesome!
together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So we had Ben on. We got a bunch of people who were getting censored and shadow banned. We had James Corbett on. We had all these people. We got, I don't know, if it was like 30 people at one time from alternative media all together. And we talked about our issues with censorship, how to fight it. We had Ernest Hancock even join us, to talk about the, IPFS and all that stuff, and the peer-to-peer type of way of storing your information. And we did all this stuff, and then we continued doing it. It was such a great, fun thing that I'm like, hey, guys, I want to do this every other week. I want to get a bunch of people from alternative media and just share thoughts. We just did one last night.
I would love to be involved in that.
Yeah, awesome. We had one last night, and we have quite a mixture. So we have some regulars that are on, kind of, I call them like the house band, the people like Jason Burmis and a couple other guys that are always on. And then I always try to get some special guests. Like a couple weeks ago was Zach Voorhees. I think before that was Del Big Tree. I had him on right after he got banned on YouTube, so he could share his story. And last night we had Greg Pallas on, the investigative journalist who, it didn't go too well because he did start talking about his how Trump stole the 2020 election book, and a lot of people on this show I could see them biting their tongue, waiting for their opportunity to talk about that. And then we also had Scott Horton on, who's a libertarian and writes at antiwar.com and a great guy. But I just try to get tons of people from different perspectives on and just share thoughts.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and because I want to also prove that people can have different opinions and have intelligent conversations about
and
it,
still coexist. Exactly.
and realize that at the end of these things that we're all on the same team. Like we're all fighting for the same thing. We all want, when you meet people all over the world, it doesn't matter what religion they are, it doesn't matter what color they are, what nationality, what culture. I mean, I have friends from all different types of cultures, Lebanese, Estonians, Italians, Polish, whatever it may be. And we all have quite a few things in common. We love community. We love our friends, our family. We love eating and bringing, people together. And we love laughing, and we want just a safe environment. And all those other details that separate us, it's all a plan to separate and conquer. It's divide and conquer. And it's
exactly it. Yeah.
So so I'll definitely have to.
I would love to
get you on the next one. I'll email you the information and get that stuff to you. But
I got to get my kids to sleep right now. Do you know that we've been on almost 3 hours?
I know. I was going to say I prepped you for the Joe Rogan podcast. I think you can do it.
This is the first. Do your podcasts always go this long?
It's all how the conversation's flowing.
Okay,
it's like if they're available, and and I'm usually my wife is she knows I'm super passionate about this stuff, so she doesn't put too many restrictions.
When we get into our new house, this is fine. Right now, I have to go because I know that everyone's waiting.
Yes.
And
I can hear my kids too.
So I'm trying to get my kids to bed. I know my wife wants to come in, so they're being very patient out there. But
can you tell everybody where they can get the documentary? Any?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's PLANdemic series.com. PLANdemic series.com. Both part 1 and part 2 are on there, plus a bunch of vignettes that we clipped out of the movies, and everything is in 12 different languages. So pretty much, you know, whatever language you speak, it's probably there. And if not, let us know, and we'll add that. There's also the rabbit hole on the website. The rabbit hole is filled with, I hired some great researchers, and I said, dump in there everything the world needs to know right now. So it's just filled with great research. So if people are doing their own studying right now, you might want to stop looking elsewhere and look in the rabbit hole, because it's all been some really powerful curated content there.
Awesome.
And there's a donation. There's a donation on the very bottom of the page, and that's how we make our movies. We do 100% donation only. We've been doing everything on a shoestring, have refused to make any money on this whatsoever. And that way it allows us to give these away and never charge for them.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. I don't do any marketers, any commercials. I've actually had more luck than others on YouTube, because I've never taken a penny from YouTube, and I never say my stuff is kid friendly, because I know that makes it easier for people to find, but it also puts restrictions on you. So I'm like, you know, I don't care how many likes, and I just want to get the information out there. So I think that that's all. People need to support people's work. That's the thing. Like podcasters like myself, we talk about it all the time, how like 0.0001% of people who listen are the ones who contribute. You know, a lot of people who get value out of your work don't end up contributing. So if you want people to be able to continue doing this, please contribute if you can, anything you can. And if you can't contribute financially, like I always say, spread it, share it, you know, tweet it, put text message the link to a friend, and do that. So, but I won't hold you up anymore. I don't want you. I don't want to be talking about a divorce next time I'm talking to you. But
that won't happen.
Yeah, I'm sure it would.
But hey, listen, this has been really nice. I've really appreciated this time with you. I appreciate your level of knowledge for all this stuff, and your ability to listen and guide the conversation. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. And like I said, I'm a huge fan, and my hat goes off to people like you who are willing to do this for the right reasons. So thank you, Mikki. We'll keep in touch, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome, brother. Thanks so much.
Hey, take care.
You too. Bye-bye.